October 17th, 1879. Black Ridge, Texas. The wind came in low across the plains that evening, dragging dust along Main Street like a restless spirit that refused to be buried. Black Ridge was the kind of town that chewed men up and spat out their bones. It smelled of sweat, whiskey, and secrets. At precisely sundown, a lone rider pushed through the haze. His name was Cole Mercer. His hat was pulled low, shadowing eyes the color of coming storms. He rode a coal-black stallion with foam at its mouth and fire in its stride. The townsfolk paused in their muttering as he dismounted in front of the Coyote's Den, the meanest bar between El Paso and the Devil's Backbone. Cole tied his horse, adjusted the revolver at his hip, and stepped inside. The bar roared with laughter and the slam of mugs. Cards snapped against tables. A piano clanged out a crooked tune. Smoke hung thick enough to choke a buzzard. And then he saw her. She stood near the far wall, trapped between a round table and four men built like overfed oxen. She wore a deep red dress that clung to her figure in a way that made the entire room tilt toward her. The curve of her waist was narrow and elegant, flowing into hips that moved with quiet confidence, even when she stood still. Her posture was proud, chin lifted, long dark hair spilling over her shoulders in loose waves that caught the lamplight like silk. She was young, breathtakingly beautiful, and very aware of the danger she was in. One of the men reached out, thick fingers grazing her arm. "Come on, sweetheart," he slurred. "Don't act like you ain't enjoying the attention." The others laughed. They were wide, greasy men with heavy jowls and cruel eyes, their vests strained against their swollen bellies, their boots planted like they owned the floor beneath them. She pulled her arm back, eyes flashing. "Remove your hand." Her voice was steady, but Cole saw it. The tension in her shoulders, the way her breath came quicker than it should. Another cowboy blocked her path. "You ain't leaving." Cole removed his gloves slowly. The piano faltered as he crossed the room. "Evenin'," he said, calm as still water. One of the men turned. "This don't concern you." Cole's gaze flicked to the woman. She met his eyes for a split second. Sharp, intelligent, fearless despite the odds. Then he looked back at the men. "Looks like it does." The biggest one stepped forward, belly pressing against his belt buckle. "You best walk away, stranger." Cole didn't move. The first punch came from the left. Cole slipped it. The second man lunged, but Cole drove his elbow into the man's throat. A chair shattered as someone crashed backward. Whiskey spilled like rain across the floor. The room erupted. One cowboy swung a bottle. Cole ducked and drove his fist into the man's jaw. The crack echoed. Another grabbed him from behind. Cole stomped hard on his boot and twisted free, slamming the man's head into the edge of the table. Wood splintered. Someone pulled a knife. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The blade flashed, but Cole's revolver was faster. He didn't fire. He simply pressed the cold barrel beneath the man's chin. "Drop it." The knife clattered to the floor. Silence fell heavy and absolute. The four men lay groaning amid broken chairs and spilled drinks. Cole lowered the gun slowly. He turned to the woman. "Ma'am." She straightened her dress, regaining composure with remarkable grace. Up close, her beauty was even more arresting. Her eyes were a striking shade of amber, fierce and alive. The faintest flush colored her cheeks, whether from anger or adrenaline he couldn't tell. "Thank you," she said softly, "though I suspect this won't end here." "You know them?" She nodded. "The Callow brothers. Their family runs cattle north of here, and most of Black Ridge." Cole glanced around. The townsfolk had already returned to their drinks, carefully pretending not to see anything. Of course, he holstered his weapon. "What's your name?" he asked. "Evelyn Hart." "Cole Mercer." Before another word could be spoken, one of the Callow brothers coughed blood into his hand and snarled, "You're dead, Mercer. You hear me? Dead." Cole didn't look back. "You'll have to get in line." He offered Evelyn his arm. She hesitated only a moment before taking it. They walked out together, the saloon doors swinging shut behind them. Outside, the wind had shifted. It carried a different scent now, trouble. As Cole helped her onto his horse, a single shot rang out from somewhere in the dark. The bullet struck the wooden post inches from his head. Evelyn gasped. Cole's eyes narrowed. Across the street, on a rooftop, a shadow moved. The Callows hadn't wasted time. Cole swung into the saddle behind Evelyn and kicked the horse into motion just as another shot split the night. Townsfolk scattered. Windows slammed shut. They rode hard down Main Street, hooves pounding like war drums. Behind them, riders emerged from alleys. 4. No. 6. The Callow brothers had friends. Evelyn twisted slightly in the saddle. "They won't stop," she said. Cole's jaw tightened. "Good," he replied. "Neither will I." The chase thundered toward the edge of town, dust swallowing them whole. And somewhere in the dark, beyond Black Ridge, fate was already loading its next bullet. The prairie opened wide and merciless before them, silvered by moonlight and scarred by dry creek beds that could snap a horse's leg if you weren't careful. Cole leaned low over the reins, one arm steady around Evelyn's waist as the black stallion devoured the ground beneath them. Behind them, the Callow riders fanned out like wolves. Gunfire cracked through the night. A bullet sliced past Cole's ear. Another tore through Evelyn's dress sleeve, grazing fabric but missing flesh. "Hold tight!" Cole shouted. "I am," she replied, though her fingers dug deeper into his arm. The stallion lunged down a narrow ravine, just as another shot rang out. Dust exploded behind them, where the bullet struck. Cole guided the horse into the shadowed gully, forcing their pursuers to either follow blindly or slow down. 2 riders took the risk. They plunged after him. Cole didn't hesitate. He twisted in the saddle, firing once. The lead pursuer's horse screamed and stumbled, throwing its rider into the rocks. The second man pulled back too late. His mount clipped the fallen animal, and both went tumbling in a violent heap of limbs and curses. But 4 riders remained. Evelyn glanced over her shoulder. "They're splitting up." Cole saw it. 2 riders veered east, cutting across the ridgeline. They were trying to flank him and drive him toward the canyon basin. Smart. Too smart for drunken fools. "Those aren't just ranch hands," Evelyn said. "The Callows hire men from the border, ex-soldiers, gunmen." Cole's expression darkened. "I figured." The ravine narrowed ahead. Too narrow. He pulled hard on the reins and veered sharply up the left embankment, the stallion scrambling and nearly slipping before clawing its way to the top. Dirt cascaded down behind them. The 2 remaining riders in the ravine were forced to slow as the path tightened. Cole gained precious seconds. But the flankers were gaining ground on higher terrain. The moon slipped behind a cloud, plunging the plains into near darkness. Cole scanned the horizon, and then he saw it. Old Miller's abandoned windmill. If it was still standing, he kicked the stallion harder. Evelyn's voice lowered. "You have a plan, don't you? Always. Care to share it?" Not yet. Gunfire erupted again from the ridge. One of the flankers had a long rifle. The shot echoed like thunder and sparked against stone inches from Cole's knee. They were close. Too close. The windmill rose ahead like a skeletal guardian, over a patch of broken fencing and collapsed sheds. The wooden blades creaked in the night breeze. Cole rode straight for it. "Cole!" Evelyn warned. "Trust me." At the last possible second, he swerved sharply behind the windmill tower, dismounted in one fluid motion, and lifted Evelyn down. "Stay low," he ordered. The first of the pursuers burst into the clearing moments later. He saw no horse, no rider, just a deserted yard. Confusion flickered across his face. That was when Cole fired. The man jerked backward off his saddle and hit the dirt. Another rider charged in from the opposite side, gun blazing. Wood splintered as bullets tore through the old shed. Evelyn ducked behind a trough, heart hammering. Cole rolled behind a broken wagon wheel and fired twice in quick succession. The second rider's hat flew off. The third spun sideways and crashed into the fence. But then, the rifleman. A shot rang from the ridge. The windmill blade exploded into fragments above them. Cole swore under his breath. He couldn't see the rifleman clearly in the dark, but he could feel him, calm, patient, calculating. A professional. The rifleman fired again. The bullet punched through the trough, grazing Evelyn's thigh. She gasped sharply. Cole's blood ran cold. He slid to her side. "You hit?" "Just a scratch," she insisted, though her face had gone pale. The rifleman was adjusting his angle. Cole made a split-second decision. He grabbed the oil lantern hanging from the windmill base and hurled it toward the collapsed shed. The lantern shattered. Flames roared up instantly, devouring the dry wood in a hungry blaze. Light flooded the yard. And there, high on the ridge, Cole saw him. The rifleman's silhouette sharpened against the firelight. Cole steadied his breathing. One shot. The rifleman squeezed his trigger at the same moment. Two explosions split the night. The ridge figure jerked violently and disappeared from view. A second later, his rifle clattered down the slope. Silence returned, broken only by the crackle of fire and the labored breathing of horses. Cole stood slowly, scanning the darkness. No more riders, for now. He turned to Evelyn, tearing a strip from his shirt and binding her leg. "You lied," he said quietly. "It is just a scratch." "You don't lie well." She gave him a faint, defiant smile. "You don't either." The fire was spreading fast. They couldn't stay. Cole retrieved his stallion, miraculously unharmed where he'd tied it behind the structure. He helped Evelyn mount again, more carefully this time. But as they prepared to ride, a distant sound rolled across the plains. Not gunfire. Hooves. Many of them. More than 6. Evelyn's expression changed. "That's not the Callow brothers." Cole listened closely. She was right. This was organized, rhythmic, disciplined. Someone else was coming, and they were coming fast. Cole swung into the saddle. "We ride south," he said. "South?" she asked. "There's nothing but desert." He looked back toward the burning windmill, toward Black Ridge in the distance. "There is now." They thundered into the darkness just as a new wave of riders crested the horizon. Dozens of silhouettes against the firelit sky. And at their front rode a man in a long black duster. Watching, not chasing, waiting. October 18th, 1879. The Southern Flats, 10 miles from Black Ridge. The desert before dawn was a different kind of silence. It wasn't peaceful. It was waiting. Cole pushed the stallion hard across the Southern Flats, the moon fading behind torn clouds as the first gray breath of morning crept over the horizon. The land had flattened into cracked earth and sparse mesquite, broken only by low dunes and dry arroyos that twisted like scars across the terrain. Behind them, the riders had not yet given chase. That worried him more than if they had. Evelyn shifted slightly in the saddle. The bandage around her thigh had darkened but not soaked through. She refused to complain, though Cole could feel the tension in her body. "Who were they?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer right away. "The man in the black duster," she finally said. "Did you see him clearly?" "Clear enough." "That wasn't one of the Callows." "I know," she swallowed. "Then this just got worse." Cole glanced down at her. "Explain." The sky brightened enough for him to see the hesitation in her eyes. "They weren't there for you," she said. The words settled between them like a drawn blade. "They were there for me." A sudden sound cut her off. Hooves. Close. Too close. Cole twisted in the saddle. Out of the morning haze, 5 riders emerged at full gallop, coming from the west this time, not Black Ridge. They had anticipated his route. "Hold on," he said. He veered sharply toward a narrow arroyo, forcing the stallion down its steep embankment just as the riders opened fire. Dirt erupted behind them. One bullet clipped the horse's saddlebag. The arroyo snaked forward, walls rising on either side. A trap if it narrowed, a shield if it didn't. The riders split. 3 following into the ravine, 2 riding along the top ridge to cut off escape. Disciplined, organized, not drunken ranch hands. "Cole," Evelyn said tightly, "you can leave me." He almost laughed. Not happening. The arroyo bent sharply left and ended. A sheer rock wall blocked their path. Cole pulled the stallion hard to a stop. No time. The 3 riders thundered into view at the far end. Cole dismounted in one fluid motion, drawing both revolvers. "Stay behind the horse," he ordered. The first rider fired too early. Cole returned 2 shots in rapid succession. The man pitched sideways out of his saddle. The second rider leaned low and fired with practiced aim. The bullet tore through Cole's sleeve, grazing his arm. He didn't flinch. He shot the rider's horse instead. The animal collapsed mid-stride, sending its rider skidding through gravel. The third man dismounted before reaching them. Smart. He took cover behind a rock outcrop and began firing controlled, measured shots. Meanwhile, shadows moved along the ridge above. The other 2. Cole counted his remaining rounds. Not enough for a prolonged fight. Evelyn suddenly moved. "Evelyn!" She ignored him, scrambling up a narrow crack in the rock wall to their right. "What are you doing?" he hissed. "Trust me." He almost smiled despite the bullets flying. She climbed with surprising agility, boots finding holds in stone, dress torn at the hem but movements precise. From above, one of the ridge riders spotted her. He shifted aim. That mistake cost him. Cole shot him through the shoulder before he could fire. The man tumbled down the slope in a spray of dust. The second ridge rider cursed and shifted position, but by then Evelyn had reached a ledge above the arroyo. "Cole!" she shouted. "There's a path up here!" Another bullet ricocheted off stone near her head. The ground-level gunman advanced cautiously, thinking he had Cole cornered. Cole waited until the man stepped fully into view. One shot. Clean. Silence returned, broken only by the echo fading through stone. Cole grabbed the reins and urged the stallion toward the crack in the rock. It was steep, but climbable. He mounted and guided the horse upward carefully, stone scraping against iron horseshoes. Above, the remaining ridge rider had vanished. Gone. Retreated. Or repositioning. They reached the ledge. The path Evelyn had found curved upward and away from the arroyo, narrow but navigable. Cole paused long enough to scan the horizon. In the distance, dust. A lot of it. The main group. They were still coming, but slower now. Watching. Testing. "This isn't random," Cole said. "No," Evelyn replied. Her breathing was steady again, but something in her expression had shifted. Not fear. Calculation. "You said they were there for you," he pressed. She nodded once. "My father wasn't just a banker in Black Ridge." Cole's eyes narrowed. "What was he?" She looked toward the distant riders gathering in formation. "He kept something for someone," she said quietly. "Something men are willing to kill for." Another gunshot echoed from somewhere unseen. A warning shot. Not aimed to hit. A message. They knew where he was. They were hurting him. Cole felt the truth settle heavy in his chest. This wasn't a bar fight anymore. It wasn't even about the Callow brothers. It was something larger. Organized. Deliberate. Dangerous. "Tell me what your father kept," Cole said. She reached slowly into the inside lining of her dress and pulled out a small, oil-wrapped leather pouch. Inside it, a brass key. Strange markings carved into its bow. Not ranch markings. Not decorative. Foreign. Before Cole could speak, a thunderous boom shook the ridge. The ground trembled beneath them. From the direction of Black Ridge, a column of black smoke rose violently into the sky. Evelyn's face went white. "They've blown up the bank." Cole stared at the distant plume. Which meant, whatever the key opened, it wasn't in Black Ridge anymore. And whoever rode under that black duster knew it. Another shot cracked from somewhere behind them, closer this time. They weren't retreating. They were tightening the circle. Cole slid the key back into Evelyn's hand. "Then we're riding toward answers," he said. "Where?" He looked south again. Toward the desert. Toward nothing. Or so most people believed. "There's an old rail depot 40 miles from here," he said. "Abandoned after the war. If your father hid something, that's where I'd start." Evelyn studied him. "You sound like you've done this before." Cole's jaw tightened slightly. "Let's just say I've been chased by worse." From below, horns sounded. Low, coordinated. The riders were moving again. Not charging, marching, systematic. The man in the black duster appeared once more at the front of the formation, still not rushing, still not shouting. Just watching. Waiting. Cole nudged the stallion forward along the ridge path. "Next time they shoot," he said quietly, "they won't miss." Behind them, the desert swallowed the fallen. Ahead of them, the truth waited. And somewhere between the two, a trap was closing. October 18th, 1879, the burned-out rail spur, Southern Territory. By midday, the desert had turned merciless. Heat shimmered across the flats, bending the horizon into wavering illusions. The abandoned rail spur rose from the dust like the bones of some dead iron beast. Twisted tracks, a collapsed loading platform, and a single stone depot with boarded windows and a rusted semaphore arm frozen mid-signal. Cole slowed the stallion as they approached. No smoke, no movement. Too quiet. "That's it?" Evelyn asked. "For now." He dismounted and lifted her down gently. Her leg was stiff, but she refused his help after touching ground. "I can walk," she insisted. "I know you can." He drew one revolver and moved toward the depot door, boots silent on sand-packed earth. The wind pushed loose sheet metal somewhere behind the structure, producing a hollow clang that echoed like distant gunfire. Cole paused, listened. Nothing. He kicked the door open and stepped inside. The air smelled of old wood, dust, and something else. Recent sweat. Someone had been here. Sunlight pierced through cracks in the boards, striping the floor in gold lines. An overturned desk lay near the far wall. A map of rail lines still clung to the plaster, corners curled and brittle. Evelyn entered behind him. "My father hated trains," she murmured absently. "Said they carried progress too fast for men who weren't ready." Cole scanned the room. Footprints in the dust. Fresh. Boot heels. At least 3 different sizes. He crouched and touched one print, still sharp at the edges. "They're ahead of us," he said quietly. A faint creak sounded above. Both of them froze. The depot had a second level, a loft once used for freight records. The creak came again. Not the wind. Wait. Cole motioned Evelyn toward the wall and raised his revolver. "Come down," he called calmly. Slow. Silence. Then, a voice. "Throw your gun first," not the man in the black duster. This voice was younger, tighter, nervous. Cole didn't move. "You've got 3 seconds," the voice snapped. Cole tilted his head slightly. "Or what?" A shotgun barrel emerged between the loft railings, pointed directly at Evelyn. Cole's jaw hardened. "Easy," Evelyn said softly. She stepped slightly forward, hands raised. "We don't want trouble." "That's funny," the unseen man replied. "Seems like trouble's been following you all day." Cole slowly lowered his revolver, but didn't release it. "Who do you ride for?" he asked. The shotgun shifted slightly. "That ain't your concern. It is if you're pointing that at her." A pause. Then heavy boots thudded on wooden steps. A young man descended, no older than 25. Sunburned face, dust-covered hat. Shotgun steady, but hands trembling. Cole recognized him. "Thomas Reed," he said. The man's eyes widened. "You remember me. Worked cattle for the McGraths. 5 years ago." Thomas swallowed. "Not anymore." "Who do you work for now?" Thomas hesitated, and that was answer enough. "The man in black," Evelyn said quietly. Thomas's jaw tightened. You don't know what you're involved in, he warned. Cole almost smiled. That makes two of us. Outside, hooves, close. Thomas flinched and looked toward the door. They're early, he muttered. Early for what? Cole demanded. Thomas backed toward the stairs. You shouldn't have come here. He knew you would. Cole's pulse sharpened. Knew. Thomas's expression shifted. Fear, not of Cole, of someone else. He said the key would bring you, Thomas whispered. Evelyn's breath caught. You know about the key? She asked. Thomas's eyes flicked to her dress, then back to Cole. They blew the bank to flush you out. The depot was always the next move. A slow realization settled over Cole. They hadn't been chasing blindly. They'd been directing, hurting, every gunshot, every rider, calculated. Outside, riders encircled the depot. Dust drifted past the windows. Thomas lowered the shotgun slightly. You can still walk away, he said to Cole. Leave her. Cole's eyes turned cold. No. A single, slow clap echoed from outside the building. Measured, deliberate. The depot door swung open, and there he was. The man in the long black duster, tall, lean, hat brim casting a sharp shadow across angular features. His boots were polished despite the desert dust. His movements carried none of the haste of the others. He stepped inside like he owned the place. Behind him, at least 15 riders waited in a loose ring. He removed his gloves one finger at a time. Well, he said smoothly, voice calm as still water. This is disappointing. Cole didn't blink. Disappointing how? I expected you to be harder to corner. Thomas's face drained of color. Sir, he began. The man in black silenced him with a glance. His eyes shifted to Evelyn. Miss Hart, he said with faint amusement. You've caused quite the inconvenience. Evelyn stood straight despite the pain in her leg. You murdered my father. The man tilted his head slightly. Business, he corrected. Cole stepped subtly in front of her. You've got what you want, he said evenly. Call off your dogs. The man smiled faintly. I don't have what I want. Not yet. His gaze dropped to Evelyn's dress. The key. Silence thickened. Outside, horses shifted impatiently. Thomas looked between them all, breathing shallow. Cole's mind worked rapidly. 15 riders outside. Unknown number hidden beyond sight. Limited ammunition. One wounded companion. And a man who had predicted every step so far. You're not leaving this building, the man in black continued softly. Unless I allow it. Evelyn's hand slipped quietly into her dress lining. Cole felt it. The key. The man's eyes sharpened. You see, he went on, almost conversationally, your father was loyal to the wrong side. There is no side, Evelyn snapped. There always is. Cole's grip tightened on his revolver. The man in black took one more step forward. And unfortunately, he said, voice dropping, you're standing in the way of a very profitable future. Outside, a rifle cocked. Inside, Thomas's shotgun wavered. The air felt ready to explode. Then, a shrill whistle cut through the desert air. Long, piercing, not from the riders, not from the depot, from the tracks. Everyone turned. From beyond the bend in the twisted rail line, a low rumble began to build. Impossible. The rail spur had been abandoned for years. The rumble grew louder, steel grinding against steel. The man in black's composure cracked for the first time. That's not possible, he muttered. But it was. Around the curve, pushing through dust and heat shimmer. A locomotive, old, scarred, but moving. And it was heading straight for the depot. The locomotive roared like something resurrected from the grave. Steam blasted from its valves in furious bursts, metal screaming as the iron wheels bit into neglected rails. Dust swirled violently around the depot yard, horses rearing and whinnying in panic. For a split second, nobody moved. Not the riders, not Thomas, not even the man in the black duster. Cole was the first to react. "Down!" he barked. He grabbed Evelyn and threw them both behind the overturned desk as the locomotive barreled past the depot at full throttle, far too fast for a simple arrival. The ground shook. Wood splintered. The engine didn't slow. It slammed into the loading platform, smashing beams and sending debris exploding outward in a violent shower of timber and iron. One of the outer support walls of the depot buckled from the shockwave. Outside, chaos erupted. 2 horses tore free from their reins. A rider was thrown. Another fired wildly at the engine, as if bullets could stop it. But the locomotive did something unexpected. It braked hard. Metal shrieked. Steam hissed. And from the side ladder of the engine, a figure jumped down. A woman. She landed hard in the dust, rolled, and came up firing twin revolvers with terrifying precision. 2 riders dropped before anyone understood what was happening. Cole lifted his head slightly from behind cover. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. The woman wore dark trousers tucked into boots, a fitted leather vest, and a red bandana around her neck. Her movements were fast, disciplined, not reckless, trained. She fired once more, shattering a rifle from a rider's grip. "Move, Mercer!" she shouted. Cole's eyes narrowed. "You know her?" Evelyn asked. "Unfortunately." The man in the black duster stepped backward out of the depot doorway, calculating rapidly. The newcomer spun her revolvers and advanced toward the depot entrance, steam swirling around her boots. "Evening, Gabriel," she called toward the man in black. "So, he had a name." Gabriel didn't answer. He watched her the way a chess player studies a dangerous piece on the board. "You always did have a flair for drama, Mara," he said calmly. "Mara." Cole exhaled slowly. "I was wondering when she'd show up," he murmured. Evelyn looked between them. "You both know her?" "She's the reason I don't gamble anymore," Cole replied dryly. Outside, gunfire erupted again as several of Gabriel's riders regrouped and began firing at the locomotive. Bullets sparked harmlessly off iron plating. The engine's cab window opened. Another man leaned out, older, gray-bearded, calmly operating the controls. Cole's brow furrowed. This wasn't random rescue. This was planned. Gabriel stepped fully into the open yard now, coat shifting in the wind, hand resting near his holstered weapon, but not drawing. "You're outnumbered," he called to Mara. She smiled faintly. "Count again." From behind the rail embankment, more figures rose, 4 of them, armed, steady, positioned with clear lines of sight on Gabriel's outer riders, snipers. Gabriel's men hesitated. The balance had shifted, not completely, but enough. Cole stood, pulling Evelyn with him. Gabriel's gaze snapped to them. "Do not move," he warned. Cole moved anyway. Gunfire cracked. But this time, it came from Mara's side. One of Gabriel's men fell before he could take aim. Gabriel's jaw tightened. "This is temporary," he said evenly. Mara advanced to stand 10 paces from him. "That's what you said in Santa Fe," she replied. The name hung in the air. Cole felt Evelyn tense beside him. Gabriel's eyes flicked briefly to Cole. "So," he said quietly, "you're still collecting strays." Cole didn't answer. He was watching Gabriel's hands. The man never fidgeted, never twitched, always controlled. Except now. His fingers tapped once against his coat. A signal? Cole scanned the ridgelines. Nothing obvious. But Gabriel wasn't the type to stand exposed without insurance. Mara took another step. "Call them off," she said. Gabriel tilted his head slightly. "And surrender? That would be wise." He almost smiled. "I don't believe in wise." And then he moved, faster than expected. His revolver cleared leather in a blur. But he didn't aim at Mara. He aimed at the locomotive's steam valve. He fired. The valve exploded. A violent plume of steam blasted outward, engulfing half the yard in blinding white vapor. Screams erupted. Horses bolted again. In the chaos, Gabriel dropped low and rolled behind a stack of rail ties. Gunfire returned from his remaining men. The fragile advantage shattered instantly. Cole shoved Evelyn toward the side of the depot. "Inside," he ordered. Mara fired blindly through the steam, forcing Gabriel's men to keep their heads down. One of her snipers went down with a cry. The older engineer shouted from the cab, trying to regain control of pressure levels. The steam cloud thickened. Visibility almost zero. Cole pulled Evelyn into the damaged depot, just as bullets tore through the doorway behind them. Inside, Thomas still stood frozen near the staircase. "What do we do?" he asked hoarsely. Cole glanced around quickly. The rear wall had partially collapsed from the train's impact. An exit. Maybe. Evelyn grabbed his sleeve. "Mara. She can handle herself." Another explosion of gunfire shook the structure. Wood cracked above them. Cole made a decision. "Through the back," he said. They moved fast, ducking through dust and falling debris. Outside, the steam cloud turned the yard into a ghost battlefield. Shadows fired at shadows. No one fully certain who they were shooting at. As Cole and Evelyn reached the rear breach, a shape stepped through the steam directly in front of them. Gun raised. Gabriel. His coat soaked with condensation, eyes cold and focused. "You should have stayed in Black Ridge," he said quietly. He pulled the trigger. But the shot never came. A single rifle crack split the chaos. Gabriel staggered slightly. Not hit. His revolver was blown from his hand. He looked to his right. Standing on the rail embankment, Mara, rifle steady, steam swirling around her like something mythic. "Next one won't miss," she warned. For the first time since this began, Gabriel hesitated. And in that hesitation, Cole saw something else. Not fear. Recognition. Of something larger in motion. Gabriel slowly stepped backward into the steam. "Keep the key safe, Miss Hart," he called through the white haze. "Because soon," his voice faded as riders regrouped around him, "you'll understand why I was the only one protecting you." Then he vanished into the chaos. Moments later, the sound of retreating hooves echoed across the flats. The steam began to thin. The yard was wrecked. 2 of Mara's men were down. 3 of Gabriel's. The locomotive hissed angrily, wounded but alive. Mara lowered her rifle and approached slowly. Cole stepped forward. "You always did make an entrance," he said. She gave him a sideways look. "You always did pick complicated women." Her eyes shifted to Evelyn, studying, measuring. Evelyn met her gaze without flinching. "The man in black," Evelyn said quietly. "What did he mean?" Mara's expression darkened. "It means," she replied, "you have no idea what that key unlocks." A distant rumble echoed again across the desert. Not a train this time. Thunder. Storm clouds gathering fast over the horizon. Mara looked south. "We can't stay here," she said. "If Gabriel retreats, he regroups. And next time he won't test you." Cole nodded once. "Where do we go?" Mara's eyes flicked briefly to Evelyn's hand. "The key decides that." Wind tore across the broken rail yard, and far off in the storm-dark distance, something flashed. Not lightning, signal mirrors. Watching, waiting. The game had just grown bigger. October 18th, 1879, storm front rising, south of the rail spur. The desert changed its mind in minutes. One moment it was steam and dust and gunsmoke. The next, the sky turned the color of bruised iron. Wind ripped across the flats, carrying sand in sharp, stinging sheets. Thunder rolled low and heavy, not dramatic, ominous. Mara stood near the wounded locomotive, scanning the horizon through a brass spyglass. "They're not retreating far," she said. "They're repositioning." Cole checked his revolver and reloaded with measured calm. "How many do you figure? After the losses?" "Maybe 12 left." "That's still more than I like." Evelyn stood near the broken depot wall, the brass key clutched tightly in her hand. She had cleaned the blood from her leg, and tightened the bandage without complaint. The storm wind whipped her hair loose, but her posture remained unbroken. "Gabriel said he was protecting me," she said quietly. Mara lowered the spyglass. "He lies professionally." "No," Evelyn replied. "He believes it." That gave both of them pause. Thomas Reed stepped out from the depot ruins, pale and shaken. He looked younger now, like a farm boy who'd stumbled into a war he didn't understand. "He won't stop," Thomas said. "You don't understand him." Mara's eyes hardened. "Oh, I understand him very well." Cole studied her. "How long?" "3 years," she answered, "before I figured out what he really was." "And what's that?" Evelyn asked. Mara hesitated. "Not a criminal," she said slowly. "Not just that. He's building something." Thunder cracked sharply overhead. The first heavy drops of rain hit the dust, instantly turning the ground to slick clay. "Building what?" Cole pressed. Mara looked at Evelyn. "An empire." The word hung in the air. Not cattle, not banks. Something larger. Evelyn's grip tightened on the key. "My father wasn't part of that." "He wasn't," Mara replied. "He was a vault. Lightning split the sky. And in that white flash," Cole saw them, on the southern ridge, not Gabriel's riders, uniformed silhouettes, organized, still, watching through field scopes. His stomach dropped. "That's not ranch hands," he muttered. Mara turned sharply, lifted the spyglass again, and swore under her breath. "They're early," she whispered. "Who are they?" Evelyn demanded. Mara lowered the glass slowly. "Federal intelligence." The storm wind roared louder. Cole blinked. "Since when do federal agents ride this far south without flags? Since whatever that key opens became important enough." Evelyn's voice sharpened. "My father wasn't involved in politics." "This isn't politics," Mara said. "It's leverage." Rain intensified, soaking coats and turning dust into sucking mud. The locomotive hissed violently as water struck hot metal. Thomas backed away nervously. "If the feds are here, Gabriel won't attack. He avoids them." "Not today," Cole said. He could see it now. Gabriel hadn't retreated in defeat. He'd retreated because he knew this second force was coming. He hadn't been protecting Evelyn from himself. He'd been protecting her from them. Thunder boomed again, and as if summoned by the sound, a flare shot into the sky from the southern ridge. Green. Signal confirmed. The federal riders began descending, in disciplined formation, not rushing, surrounding. Mara's jaw tightened. "They don't know which side we're on," she said. "Do we?" Cole replied. The locomotive engineer leaned out of the cab. "We can move her," he shouted over the wind. "But she won't outrun cavalry in this mud." Cole's eyes scanned quickly. Ridge to the west, too steep. Open flats east, suicide. North, back toward Gabriel. South, federal line. Every direction closed. Evelyn stepped forward suddenly. "They want the key," she said. "Yes," Mara replied. "Then we give them something else." Both Cole and Mara looked at her sharply. Evelyn knelt in the mud and opened the leather pouch fully for the first time. Inside, beneath the brass key, was a folded oilskin paper. Mara froze. "You didn't mention that." "I wasn't sure it mattered." Evelyn unfolded it carefully despite the rain. It wasn't a map. It was a ledger page. Columns of names, dates, payments. And in the margin, a symbol matching the carving on the key. Cole's pulse quickened. "This isn't money," he said. "No," Evelyn replied. "It's shipments." "Of what?" Thomas asked nervously. Evelyn's eyes lifted slowly. Rail components. Mara's face drained of color. "No." Cole understood before she said it. "Military rail expansion," he murmured. Mara nodded grimly. "Secret lines. Strategic supply routes." Thomas looked confused. "That's not illegal." "Not unless," Mara said quietly. "They're being built somewhere they're not supposed to exist." Lightning flashed again. The Federal riders were halfway down the ridge now, rifles visible, disciplined, unsmiling. Cole looked at Mara. "And Gabriel?" Mara's voice dropped. "He's been sabotaging them." Silence. Rain pounded harder. Evelyn looked between them. "My father was holding the proof," Mara finished. "And the key?" Cole asked. Mara exhaled slowly. "The key likely opens a rail vault. Hidden storage. Evidence." Another green flare shot upward, closer now. The feds were signaling an advance. Cole made a decision. "We don't run." Mara stared at him. "We meet them." "Yes." "And if they shoot?" He looked at Evelyn. "They won't." "Not if she speaks first." Evelyn swallowed, but nodded. The four of them stepped forward into the open yard as the Federal riders approached through rain and thunder. At their front rode a tall officer in a dark blue coat, hat brim steady despite the storm. He raised a hand. The riders halted 20 yards away. Silence, except for rain. The officer's eyes scanned the wreckage, the bodies, the locomotive, the broken depot. Then he focused on Evelyn. "Miss Hart," he called evenly, "you are in possession of federal property." Evelyn stepped forward despite Cole's instinct to pull her back. "My father was murdered for it," she replied. The officer's jaw tightened slightly. "We are aware." Cole stiffened. "Aware?" the officer continued. "You will hand over the key and any accompanying documentation." Evelyn lifted the ledger page, but did not release it. "And if I refuse?" The officer's expression did not change. "Then, you will be taken into custody." Behind him, rifles shifted slightly. Cole's hand hovered near his revolver. Mara's eyes flicked subtly toward the western ridge, watching, calculating. Because through the sheets of rain, another shape appeared in the distance. Riders, Gabriel's men, not attacking, observing, waiting to see who claimed the prize. The storm roared louder. The world felt suspended on a knife edge. Evelyn looked at Cole, then at Mara, then back at the federal officer. "You say this is federal property," she said carefully. "It is." "Then why was my father holding it?" A flicker crossed the officer's face. A mistake, a crack. Before he could answer, a single rifle shot rang out from somewhere unseen. One of the federal riders jerked and fell from his saddle. Chaos erupted instantly. The officer shouted commands. Riders scattered for cover. Cole's eyes snapped toward the western ridge. Gabriel's men had not fired. The shot had come from higher. North. From Black Ridge's direction. Another unseen player. Another faction. Mara's voice cut through the storm. "Everyone down." Bullets began tearing into the yard from the northern hills. Precise. Long range. Professional. Not Gabriel. Not federal. Someone else had entered the game and they were targeting everyone. October 18th, 1879. Crossfire in the storm. The second shot came before the first body hit the mud. Another federal rider spun sideways out of his saddle, rifle flying from his hands. Panic fractured the clean formation instantly. Horses screamed, slipping in the rain-slick clay. "Snipers!" someone shouted. But from where? Cole dropped low, pulling Evelyn down beside him as bullets ripped through the depot's remaining wall. Wood exploded into splinters. Mud sprayed upward in violent bursts around them. Mara rolled behind a broken rail tie, scanning the northern ridge through rain-blurred vision. "There!" she snapped. High on the distant rise, barely visible through storm and distance, small flashes of light. Scoped rifles, at least 3, maybe more. The federal officer barked rapid commands, his men scrambling into defensive positions with disciplined efficiency. "They're not ours," he shouted over the thunder. "Return fire!" But it was nearly impossible to see targets clearly. Another shot cracked. A locomotive window shattered. The older engineer ducked inside the cab. Thomas crawled through the mud, shaking. "Who are they?" he yelled. "No idea," Cole muttered, but his instincts were screaming something familiar. These weren't desperate gunmen. They weren't lawmen. They were eliminating witnesses. Another rifle crack. One of Gabriel's distant riders fell from his horse. Cole's eyes narrowed. They weren't favoring a side. They were thinning the board. Gabriel's silhouette appeared briefly on the western ridge, watching the chaos unfold. Even from this distance, Cole could see the shift in his posture. This wasn't part of Gabriel's plan either. Mara slid beside Cole, rain streaming down her face. "This is bigger than we thought," she said tightly. "No kidding." Evelyn's breathing was controlled but fast. "They're not trying to take the key," she said. "No," Cole agreed grimly. "They're trying to erase it." A bullet struck inches from Evelyn's hand. Cole shoved her toward the locomotive's steel bulk for cover. The federal officer crawled toward them through mud and gunfire, coat soaked, face grim. "Miss Hart," he shouted. "We need that documentation now." Evelyn hesitated. "Now," he barked. Mara grabbed her wrist. "If they get it, we lose control." "And if we don't?" Cole countered. Another federal rider dropped. The officer cursed violently. "They've got elevation and range," he yelled to his men. "We can't hold open ground." Cole scanned rapidly. The northern ridge snipers had superior position. Gabriel's men were pinned west, Federals pinned south. They were trapped in the middle kill zone, and the storm was only getting worse. Thunder cracked directly overhead. Lightning illuminated the battlefield in stark white clarity. And for a split second, Cole saw something else on the northern ridge. A flag, black, no insignia. Professional mercenaries. Rail saboteurs? No. Private contractors. Hired silence. Mara saw it too. "Oh hell," she breathed. "The consortium." The name hit hard. Even the federal officer went still at that. "You're certain?" he demanded. "Yes." Another shot. Thomas cried out. A bullet tore through his shoulder, spinning him into the mud. Evelyn crawled to him instinctively, despite the danger. Cole covered her with his revolver, firing twice toward a flashpoint on the ridge. Not to hit, but to disrupt rhythm. It bought seconds. Only seconds. Mara looked at Cole, decision forming in her eyes. "We can't fight all three." "Agreed." "Then we change the board." She turned to the federal officer. "You want the key?" she shouted. "Then help us break north." The officer hesitated only a moment before nodding sharply. "Two squads, suppressing fire. Advance by leap." Federal rifles began coordinated volleys toward the ridge. Not precise, but enough to disrupt sniper timing. Gabriel's riders, seeing the shift, began firing north as well. Temporary alliance. Under necessity. Cole grabbed Evelyn. "Stay between me and Mara," he ordered. Rain turned to sheets. Mud sucked at boots. The locomotive hissed behind them like a wounded animal. Under covering fire, they pushed forward across open ground. Bullets tore the mud around them. One Federal went down mid-stride. Another dragged him behind a broken fence post. Thomas staggered up despite his wound, teeth gritted. "Move!" Cole barked at him. They reached the base of the northern incline, steep, rocky, exposed. Mara looked up through rain. "They've got at least 5 rifles up there." "Then we make it 6, Cole replied. He holstered one revolver and began climbing, boots slipping on wet stone. Evelyn followed despite her injured leg, jaw set in fierce determination. Halfway up, a sniper spotted them. The crack came instantly. The bullet struck Cole's hat clean off his head. Another shot. Mara fired back without stopping, forcing the sniper to duck. Federal suppressing fire intensified from below. Gabriel's riders shifted position west, advancing cautiously. Everyone now aiming north. The consortium snipers adjusted, calm and lethal. One of them changed position too late. Cole reached a rock outcrop and fired point blank as the man rose to shoot. The sniper fell backward, rifle tumbling down the slope. 3 more remained. Mara reached the ledge beside him, breathing hard. "Left side," she warned. "A muzzle flash." Evelyn screamed, but not in pain. The bullet had grazed the rock inches from her face. Cole surged upward in a burst of speed, closing distance before the sniper could cycle another round. They collided violently. Mud, fists, knife flashes. Cole slammed the man's wrist against stone until the rifle fell. One brutal strike ended the fight. Mara handled another sniper with cold efficiency. Below, the Federals pushed closer to the ridgeline. Gabriel himself began advancing now. Measured, calculating. The consortium's final 2 snipers attempted withdrawal. Too late. Crossfire trapped them. Within minutes. Silence. Rain still poured. Bodies lay scattered along the ridge. Cole stood, chest heaving, scanning for further threats. None. For now. Below, the Federal officer approached cautiously up the incline. Gabriel stopped halfway up the western side, watching. The temporary truce hung fragile in the storm air. The officer removed his hat, rain pouring down his face. "The consortium," he said quietly. "That explains it." Gabriel's voice carried across the wind. "They eliminate liabilities." The officer shot him a cold look. "You're one of them." Gabriel's expression didn't change. "I was." Silence. Evelyn stepped forward, soaked, exhausted, but steady. "My father?" she asked. Gabriel met her eyes. He realized too late what he was holding. "And you?" "I was trying to buy him time." Thunder rolled again. The officer's jaw tightened. "You sabotaged federal expansion." "I sabotaged a private rail monopoly hiding behind your expansion," Gabriel replied evenly. The officer didn't deny it. That was answer enough. Evelyn slowly unfolded the ledger again. Rain tried to tear it from her hands. "This doesn't belong to any of you," she said. Cole looked at her sharply. "What are you doing?" She looked out over the battlefield. The Federals, Gabriel's men, the fallen snipers. "I'm ending it." Before anyone could react, she struck a match against the metal rail. The tiny flame flickered wildly in the storm wind. Mara's eyes widened. "Evelyn." The flame caught the oilskin. Fire spread fast. The ledger ignited. The key remained in her other hand. The Federal officer lunged forward. "Stop." Gabriel didn't move. He simply watched. The paper burned to ash within seconds, rain hissing against flame, until nothing remained but black fragments blowing into the storm. Silence fell heavier than before. Evelyn held up the brass key. "This," she said, voice steady, "is the only piece left." The officer stared at her. Gabriel's expression changed. Not anger, respect. Somewhere in the distance another thunderclap echoed. But this one wasn't thunder. It was distant artillery. Far south. Low. Heavy. Everyone turned toward the sound. The officer's face darkened. "That," he said slowly, "wasn't weather." Gabriel's eyes narrowed toward the southern horizon. "They've started without it." Cole looked at Evelyn. "Started what?" No one answered, because far beyond the storm curtain, a line of smoke was rising, not from battle, from construction, and it stretched for miles. The smoke didn't drift like fire smoke. It rose in disciplined columns, evenly spaced, measured, industrial. Rain thinned slightly, revealing more of the southern skyline. Through the gray haze, faint silhouettes emerged. Metal frameworks, skeletal towers, rail scaffolding stretching across the distant plains. Cole stared hard. "That's not temporary construction," he said. The Federal officer lowered his hat brim against the rain. "No," he replied grimly. "It's permanent." Mara's jaw tightened. They weren't waiting for the ledger. Gabriel exhaled slowly, eyes locked on the rising smoke. They already had what they needed. Evelyn looked down at the key in her hand. "Then what does this open?" Gabriel met her gaze. "Proof." The word cut deeper than gunfire. Thomas staggered up the ridge, clutching his bleeding shoulder. "They're building a private line," he muttered weakly, "all the way south." "Beyond federal oversight," Mara added. The officer didn't argue. That silence was loud. Cole stepped closer to Gabriel, lowering his voice. "You knew." Yes. You didn't stop it. I tried, Gabriel said evenly. But you can't dismantle something this large from the outside. Evelyn's eyes flashed. So you kill bankers instead? Gabriel didn't flinch. I tried to move him. That's not an answer. No, he agreed quietly. It isn't. Another distant boom rolled across the desert. Controlled demolition, track laying. Something massive was being assembled. The officer turned sharply to one of his surviving men. Signal command, immediate dispatch, full verification. The rider hesitated. With what proof, sir? The officer's jaw clenched. Exactly. The ledger was gone. The consortium snipers were dead. The evidence burned in the storm. Only the key remained. And no one here knew where it fit. Mara wiped rain from her face. We're standing on a battlefield while they pour concrete 20 miles away. Cole looked at Evelyn. Your father ever mention a vault? She nodded slowly. Once. He said if anything ever happened. I was to find the station beneath the station. Gabriel's head turned sharply. Say that again. Station beneath the station. Gabriel's expression changed for the first time into something close to urgency. The southern rail yard, he said quietly. The original depot. Before expansion. Mara swore softly. It's underground. Cole looked south again at the rising smoke. How far? 25 miles, Gabriel replied. Through open ground. The officer straightened. If there's a vault with documentation. There won't be for long, Mara interrupted. Not if construction's already underway. Gabriel's eyes flicked toward his remaining riders. He made a decision. You have two options, he said to the officer. Arrest us all and lose whatever's left. Or ride with us. The officer studied him carefully. You expect cooperation? No, Gabriel replied. I expect self-interest. Thunder rolled again, weaker now as the storm began shifting east. The officer turned to Evelyn. That key opens federal property. Evelyn held his gaze. No, she said. It opens truth. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, the officer gave a short nod. We ride. Cole blinked slightly. That was easier than expected. Don't mistake urgency for trust, the officer replied coldly. Gabriel signaled to his riders. Mara whistled sharply to her remaining men. Temporary alliance sealed not by handshake, but necessity. They descended the ridge quickly. Horses were regrouped. The locomotive engineer shouted down from the cab. You abandoning her? Mara looked up at him. Can you move? Barely. Then head north. Draw attention. The engineer grinned faintly. Finally, someone speaks my language. Steam hissed again as he adjusted pressure. Cole helped Evelyn mount carefully. Her leg trembled, but she masked it well. You don't have to ride hard, he murmured. Yes, she said firmly. I do. Gabriel mounted his horse smoothly, despite the chaos of minutes before. Rain tapered into mist. The storm was moving on. But the air felt heavier than before. As they formed a loose column, Cole rode beside Gabriel briefly. You were protecting her, Cole said quietly. Gabriel didn't look at him. I was protecting the leverage. That's not what I asked. Gabriel finally glanced sideways. Both things can be true. Ahead, the southern smoke thickened. Columns of steel frameworks became clearer with each mile. Rail cranes, supply trains, armed perimeter guards. This wasn't quiet construction. It was occupation. Thomas rode awkwardly near the rear, pale but determined. Mara positioned herself along the flank, eyes constantly scanning. The Federal riders maintained rigid formation, rifles ready. An uneasy coalition riding toward something none of them fully controlled. After several miles, they crested a low rise, and saw it fully for the first time. The southern expansion yard, massive, miles of half-laid track, steam-powered cranes swinging iron beams, tents arranged in military precision, armed patrols moving in grids, and at the center, a grand stone terminal building, brand new, built atop something older. Evelyn's breath caught. "Station beneath the station," she whispered. Gabriel nodded once. "That's it." Cole's pulse quickened. "How many guards?" Mara scanned through her spyglass. "Dozens on the perimeter. More inside." The federal officer swore under his breath. This wasn't authorized. Gabriel gave him a flat look. It was financed. That stung. Evelyn stared at the stone structure. "If the vault is beneath it." "Then we go under," Cole said. The officer turned sharply. "This is federal jurisdiction." "And this," Mara replied coolly, "is federal embarrassment." Silence. Gabriel leaned forward in his saddle. "There's a drainage culvert on the east side," he said. "Original rail foundation access. They'll have sealed the main entrances. But not that." Cole looked at him. "You've been here." "Yes." "When?" "Too late." Another distant blast shook the yard. They were expanding fast, building over whatever lay below, burying it. Evelyn tightened her grip on the key. "If we don't move now," she said quietly, "there won't be anything left to unlock." The wind shifted again, carrying the smell of coal smoke and fresh-cut stone. The officer inhaled slowly, then exhaled. "We move at dusk," he said. "Small group. Quiet." Gabriel nodded. Mara checked her weapons. Cole looked at Evelyn. "You ready?" She met his eyes without hesitation. "I've been ready since Black Ridge." Below them, the southern expansion yard roared with industry. Above it, the sky cleared. And beneath it, something waited, buried, hidden, and running out of time. The sky bled orange and violet as the sun dropped behind the distant mesas. Shadows stretched long across the southern expansion yard, turning steel scaffolds into skeletal giants and half-laid rails into black veins across the earth. Work crews were rotating out, night guards rotating in. Torches flared along the perimeter. Cole lay flat against a rocky ridge east of the yard, studying the patrol patterns below. Beside him, Mara adjusted her spyglass. Gabriel crouched slightly behind them, calm and unreadable. The federal officer remained a few yards back with two of his most trusted men. Evelyn lay between Cole and Mara, watching silently. "They've doubled the outer ring since we crested the hill," Mara murmured. "They're nervous," Cole said. "Good," Gabriel replied. "Nervous men make mistakes." Below, a whistle blew. A cargo wagon rolled toward the main terminal building, the new stone structure erected at the yard's center. Fresh masonry, still pale against the darkening sky. Evelyn stared at it. "That building wasn't there a month ago." "No," Gabriel said quietly. "But what's under it was." Cole looked to Gabriel. "Explain." Gabriel pointed toward the base of the structure. The original depot sat on that foundation before the war. When expansion was approved, they didn't demolish the sublevel. They built over it. "To bury evidence," Mara said. "To protect assets," Gabriel corrected. The federal officer scoffed quietly, but said nothing. Thomas, pale but stubborn, crawled forward slightly despite his wounded shoulder. "Where's this culvert?" he asked. Gabriel shifted his gaze eastward. There, barely visible in the dimming light, a narrow stone runoff channel descending beneath the rail embankment toward the main building. Two guards walked near it. Another perched above with a rifle. Cole studied the terrain. "We take out the ridge guard first." Quiet. Mara nodded. "I'll handle that." The officer leaned forward. "If this fails, we disengage." Cole didn't look back. "It won't." Mara slid backward and disappeared along the rocks like smoke. Gabriel turned to Evelyn. "When we get inside," he said, voice low, "you don't hesitate. The vault may be booby-trapped." Evelyn didn't blink. "My father wouldn't have rigged explosives." "No," Gabriel replied, "but the consortium would." Cole looked between them. "You're awfully familiar with their habits." Gabriel met his eyes evenly. "I learned from them." The light faded further. Torches brightened. The yard noise shifted. Less hammering, more guard chatter. Mara's rifle cracked once, soft, distant. The ridge guard collapsed without a sound. Seconds later, the two near the culvert turned their heads upward in confusion. Cole and Gabriel were already moving. They descended the slope fast and low, boots silent in dirt and gravel. Cole reached the first guard and struck him hard at the base of the skull. Gabriel disarmed the second and dropped him into unconsciousness with brutal efficiency. Thomas and the two federal agents secured them quickly. Evelyn reached the culvert entrance, key clutched tight. Water trickled faintly through it, more damp than flowing. Gabriel knelt, examining the stonework. "Original masonry," he murmured. "Pre-expansion." Cole glanced back toward the yard. Two patrols passed within 30 yards, but did not look their direction. "Move," he whispered. They slipped into the culvert. Cold, narrow, dark. The air smelled of wet stone and old rust. Thomas lit a small, hooded lantern. They moved crouched through the tunnel, boots splashing softly. Above them, faint vibrations hummed through stone, construction continuing even at dusk. After 20 yards, the culvert angled upward and widened slightly. Gabriel stopped abruptly. "Wait." He examined the wall ahead. Thin wire, nearly invisible in low light. Tripwire. Cole crouched beside him. Explosive or alarm? Gabriel carefully traced it. It ran into the stone arch overhead. Mara slipped past quietly, inspecting. "Bell rig," she whispered. Silent signal to upper floor. The federal officer's expression hardened. They knew someone would try this route. Or they're just thorough, Cole muttered. Gabriel carefully clipped the wire with a small blade. No sound followed. They moved on. The tunnel ended at a heavy iron grate, sealed from inside. Rust clung to its bars, but the lock was new. Evelyn stepped forward slowly. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes did not. She inserted the brass key. For one terrifying second, nothing. Then, a deep mechanical click echoed through stone. The lock released. Everyone froze. No alarm, no explosion. Gabriel exhaled slowly. Vault access. Cole pulled the grate open carefully. Behind it, a narrow stone stairwell descending into darkness. Cold air breathed upward from below. Old air. Sealed air. Thomas swallowed hard. "Feels like a tomb." "Or a truth," Evelyn replied. They descended carefully. One step, then another. The stairwell spiraled downward farther than expected. 30 feet, 40. At the bottom, a reinforced steel door embedded in original depot stonework. No visible keyhole. Only a circular brass plate engraved with the same symbol carved into Evelyn's key. Gabriel stepped aside. "This is it." Evelyn approached. She pressed the key into the circular plate. It fit perfectly. She turned it. Deep within the mechanism, gears shifted. Heavy, old, powerful. The steel door groaned and slowly swung inward. Dust poured outward in a cold breath. Lantern light spilled inside. And what it revealed stopped them all. Crates, dozens of them, stacked neatly, stamped with federal rail insignia. But beneath that, another marking, black, unregistered, the consortium symbol. Cole stepped forward carefully. He pried open the nearest crate. Inside, not rail parts, not documents, rifles, brand new, military grade. Mara opened another. Ammunition, hundreds of rounds. The federal officer's face drained of color. "This wasn't infrastructure," he whispered. Gabriel nodded slowly. It was militarization. Thomas backed up a step. "They're building a private army." Evelyn stared at the rows of crates. "My father knew." "Yes," Gabriel said softly. "And that's why he died." Cole moved deeper into the vault. At the far end stood a large iron strongbox. Different from the others. Smaller. Personal. Gabriel looked at Evelyn. That's what he was protecting. She walked toward it slowly. No lock visible. Only the same engraved symbol. She inserted the key again. Turned. The lid released with a heavy metallic snap. Inside, ledgers, correspondence, signed agreements, names, powerful names, rail executives, political sponsors, military contractors, proof, undeniable. The federal officer stepped forward slowly, staring at the documents. This could collapse half the board in Washington. Gabriel's voice was quiet. That's why they buried it. Above them. A sudden tremor shook dust from the ceiling. Heavy. Close. Cole looked up sharply. They know. Mara extinguished the lantern halfway. Footsteps echoed faintly above the stairwell. Multiple. Boots. Measured. Deliberate. Gabriel's eyes hardened. The consortium. The tremor came again, this time louder. The sound of something heavy being dragged across the culvert entrance. Cole's pulse spiked. They're sealing it. Another boom. Closer. Not construction. Charges. The federal officer cursed. They're collapsing the access. Dust rained down thicker now. The stairwell vibrated violently. Thomas stumbled. Evelyn grabbed the strongbox papers desperately. Cole grabbed her arm. We have to move. But the crates. Forget the crates. Another explosion. The lights flickered. Stone cracked above them. The consortium wasn't trying to recover the vault. They were erasing it. Alive. Cole shoved the documents into a satchel. Alternate exit? He demanded. Gabriel scanned rapidly. There's an emergency rail shaft. North wall. They rushed toward it as another blast rocked the chamber. Behind them, the stairwell ceiling collapsed with a deafening crash. Stone sealed the entrance. Dust choked the air. Darkness swallowed them. And somewhere above, the southern expansion yard continued building, as if nothing beneath it had ever existed. The dust didn't settle. It hung thick and choking, filling lungs with grit and panic. The lantern had been knocked from Thomas's hand during the collapse, its light flickering weakly on the stone floor before dying entirely. Darkness swallowed them whole. For a moment, there was only coughing, shifting boots, the distant groan of stressed stone above. Everyone sound off, Cole ordered through the haze. Here, Mara replied immediately. Alive, Thomas wheezed. The federal officer answered next, still breathing, a pause. Then, I'm fine, Evelyn said, though her voice trembled slightly. Cole exhaled in relief he didn't show. Gabriel's voice came from the dark, steady as ever. North wall. Feel for the air. Cole moved forward with one hand extended, the other gripping his revolver. The air felt colder toward the right side of the chamber. Then, a faint draft. There, Mara whispered. Cole found it. A narrow vertical shaft carved into the original stone foundation. Old iron ladder rungs bolted into the wall. Emergency ventilation. Gabriel struck a match briefly, shielding it with his palm. In the brief flare of orange, they saw the shaft rising perhaps 30 feet before angling sharply. How stable? The federal officer asked. Gabriel examined the rungs. Old, but solid enough. Another explosion boomed overhead, closer. Dust poured from the ceiling. They're not just sealing it, Mara said. They're burying the entire sublevel. Climb, Cole said. He handed the satchel of documents to Evelyn. You go up second, he told her. If anything gives way, you climb past me. She nodded once. Thomas insisted on going first despite his wounded shoulder. I'll pull from above, he said through gritted teeth. Cole watched him climb into the darkness, one rung at a time. The shaft creaked, but held. Mara followed, then Evelyn. Cole climbed after her, Gabriel and the federal officer bringing up the rear. Halfway up, a violent tremor shook the shaft. A deep crack echoed somewhere below. Stone shifted. Faster, the officer shouted. They climbed harder. Evelyn's injured leg faltered briefly. Cole braced her foot with his shoulder, pushing her upward. Another blast. The lower vault floor gave way with a thunderous crash. Cold air rushed upward as the chamber beneath them collapsed into rubble. "Don't look down," Cole muttered. The shaft angled sharply at the top, turning horizontal into a tight crawl space, barely wide enough for one person. Thomas's voice echoed faintly ahead. "There's light," hope flared, but brief. Because with it came something else. Voices, muffled. Above, boots moving. The consortium had sealed the main entrance. But they hadn't left. They were making sure nothing survived below. Thomas reached the end of the crawlspace first. He froze. "Problem," he whispered. Cole reached him moments later and peered ahead. The shaft ended behind a grated vent, opening into a storage cellar beneath the new terminal building. Two armed guards stood inside the cellar, talking casually. Rifles slung, unaware. Mara slid up beside Cole. "Well," she murmured, "that's inconvenient." Gabriel's eyes narrowed. "They'll rotate soon." "How long?" Cole asked. "Minutes." Above them, heavy machinery rumbled again. More demolition. Time was collapsing with the vault. Evelyn crawled forward carefully, clutching the satchel tight. "We can't wait." Cole studied the guards through the grate. One leaned casually against a crate. The other paced slowly. Mara's hand drifted to her knife. Cole shook his head slightly. "Too loud if they fire." Gabriel leaned close to the grate, studying the hinges. "Rusty," he whispered. "Could snap quietly." Another tremor shook the shaft. Dust rained into their eyes. The lower collapse was spreading upward. They didn't have minutes. They had seconds. Cole made a decision. "When the next tremor hits," he whispered, "we move. Use the noise." Everyone nodded. They waited. Heartbeat. Breath. Then, a massive explosion rocked the building above. The cellar ceiling rattled violently. The guards cursed and looked upward instinctively. Cole kicked the grate. It burst inward with a sharp metallic crack, lost in the roar of the blast. Mara surged through first. One guard went down with a precise strike to the throat. Gabriel disarmed the second before he could shout, slamming him into a crate and knocking him unconscious. Silence returned, except for the continued rumbling of controlled demolition outside. They pulled themselves fully into the cellar. The federal officer secured the guards quickly. Cole listened carefully. Voices echoed faintly from the upper floors. But no alarm yet. The demolition had masked their escape. Evelyn stood slowly, breathing hard. "We're inside." Gabriel nodded. "For now." The cellar stairs led upward into the heart of the new station. Cole climbed halfway and peeked around the corner. The main terminal floor above was active. Engineers, foremen, armed guards moving in structured patterns. None yet aware of what had just happened beneath their feet. Mara looked to Gabriel. "You think they know the vault was opened?" Gabriel's jaw tightened. "They'll check." As if summoned by the thought. A bell rang faintly somewhere above. Not the tripwire alarm from earlier. This one different, deeper, more official. The federal officer stiffened. "They've discovered the breach." Boots began moving faster overhead. Voices sharpened, orders barked. Cole looked at Evelyn. "You still want to end this?" Her grip tightened on the satchel. "Yes," Gabriel exhaled slowly. "Then we don't run." Mara arched an eyebrow. "That's new." Gabriel's eyes darkened. "They're expecting escape, not exposure." Cole understood immediately. "You want to go public." The federal officer looked between them sharply. "This yard is filled with contractors, laborers, and witnesses," Gabriel finished. Another set of boots thundered down the cellar stairs. They didn't have long. Evelyn stepped forward, face pale but fierce. "My father kept this hidden because he thought exposure would cost lives." She looked at Cole. "How many more die if we keep hiding?" Cole met her eyes. He saw no hesitation there now. Only fire. Mara smirked faintly. "Well," she said, checking her revolver, "I've always preferred dramatic." The cellar door above burst open. 3 consortium guards rushed down the stairs. And froze. Because instead of fugitives fleeing, they found Cole and the others climbing upward toward them. Cole didn't slow. He slammed into the first guard and sent him tumbling backward. Gabriel disarmed the second mid-motion. Mara fired one precise shot into the ceiling to scatter attention upstairs. The explosion of noise drew eyes instantly. They burst onto the main terminal floor. Construction halted. Dozens of workers stared. Foremen shouted. Armed consortium officers raised rifles, but hesitated. Too many witnesses. Too public. Evelyn stepped forward into the center of the grand terminal hall. Mud-streaked. Blood on her dress. Hair loose from the storm. She lifted the satchel high. "I know what you're building," she shouted. Her voice echoed off new stone walls. The entire hall froze, high above on a balcony. A sharply dressed man in a black waistcoat stepped into view. Not Gabriel, not federal. Older, refined, cold, the real architect. He looked down calmly. "Well," he said smoothly, "that is inconvenient." Gabriel's voice dropped to a whisper beside Cole. "That's him." The man folded his hands behind his back. "Miss Hart," he continued evenly, "you should not have opened that vault." Evelyn's voice did not shake. "You murdered my father. I invested in progress." He glanced at the federal officer. "And you were never meant to see this." The officer's face hardened. "I see enough." Workers were whispering now, murmuring, fear spreading. The architect's smile faded. He raised one hand slowly. Guards shifted their rifles. Cole's fingers tightened on his revolver. The balance teetered. Then, from outside the terminal, a loud whistle shrieked. Steam, heavy, approaching fast. Everyone turned. Through the massive glass entry windows, an engine burst into view. The same battered locomotive from the rail spur, charging straight toward the terminal doors. The older engineer leaning from the cab, grinning like a madman. "Oh no," Mara breathed. The architect's composure cracked. "Stop that train," he barked. Too late. The locomotive smashed through the half-installed front doors in a storm of shattered glass and splintered wood. Chaos detonated across the hall. Workers screamed. Guards scattered. Steam filled the terminal in blinding white fury. The engine screeched to a halt in the center of the grand floor. The engineer leaned out the window and tipped his hat. "Evening, folks." Cole couldn't help it. He laughed once, sharp, wild. The architect staggered back toward the balcony rail, furious. Gabriel stepped forward into the steam-filled hall. "It's over," he said quietly. But the architect only smiled thinly. "No," he replied. And somewhere deep beneath the station, a slow, mechanical hum began to build. Different from before. Not demolition, not construction. Activation. Evelyn's eyes widened. "What is that?" Gabriel went pale for the first time. "They weren't building a rail yard," he whispered. "They were building a launch line." The hum grew louder, and the rails beneath their feet began to vibrate. The rails hummed beneath their boots. Not the loose rattle of freight vibration. Not the grind of steel under load. This was deeper, alive. The steam from the crashed locomotive swirled through the grand terminal, mixing with dust and shattered glass. Workers scrambled for exits. Consortium guards tried to regroup, shouting contradictory orders. Above, on the balcony, the architect steadied himself against the railing. "You're too late," he said calmly, though his voice carried strain now. "It's already begun." Gabriel stepped forward into the open floor, eyes scanning the structure. "What exactly has begun?" Cole demanded. The hum intensified. A deep, mechanical whir echoed from below the station, far below. Mara's gaze dropped to the rails running through the terminal floor. Unlike ordinary lines, these were reinforced, thicker, and locked into a central steel channel. "This isn't expansion," she muttered. "It's propulsion." The federal officer looked sharply at Gabriel. "Launch what?" Gabriel's jaw tightened. "A fast line. Experimental. High-pressure rail system." Cole blinked once. "Faster than standard locomotives?" "Much." Evelyn's breath caught. Military transport. Gabriel nodded grimly. Troops, weapons, anywhere in hours. The architect smiled faintly. Efficiency, he corrected. Suddenly, a massive metallic clang echoed from beneath them. Somewhere underground, something enormous locked into place. The hum shifted pitch. Higher, sharper. Thomas staggered slightly as the floor trembled. "Is something coming?" he asked hoarsely. The architect spread his arms slightly. "Something is leaving," Mara swore under her breath. Gabriel's eyes widened as understanding struck. "The vault wasn't just storage," he said. "It was housing," Evelyn whispered. "Below them." A thunderous roar erupted. Steam blasted from hidden vents along the terminal walls. Pressure gauges mounted near the tracks snapped violently into red. Cole grabbed Evelyn's arm. "Move." The central rails split apart slightly, revealing a narrow, sealed track chamber beneath. And then, it rose. A sleek iron carriage unlike any train car Cole had ever seen. Streamlined, armored, no windows. Its body riveted tight and painted matte black. The hum came from within it. Contained power. Contained speed. The architect's voice echoed above the chaos. "Gentlemen and lady, behold the future." The carriage locked into the track with a violent metallic snap. Pressure valves along its sides hissed white steam. The federal officer stared in disbelief. This was never authorized. "Authorization," the architect replied coolly, "is a matter of paperwork." Mara's voice was sharp. "How many are inside?" The architect didn't answer. That was answer enough. Gabriel stepped forward, fury controlled but visible. "You're sending it south." "Yes." "To where?" The architect's eyes flicked toward the distant horizon. "To secure our investment." Cole understood immediately. Private military deployment. Off books. Rapid. Irreversible. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the satchel of documents. "If that leaves," she said, "no one will be able to stop them." The hum rose higher. A whistle shrieked from within the armored carriage. Not steam. Mechanical. Timed. The federal officer drew his revolver. "Shut it down." He aimed upward at the architect, but a consortium guard tackled him from behind. Gunfire exploded across the terminal. Workers screamed again. Mara dove behind a marble column, firing with precision. Cole dragged Evelyn toward the side of the hall. Gabriel sprinted toward the control panel mounted beside the track channel. A metal console with levers and pressure dials. 2 armed guards stood in his path. Gabriel didn't slow. He disarmed the first mid-strike and drove the second into the railing with brutal force. Cole joined him seconds later. "How do we stop it?" Cole shouted. Gabriel scanned the console rapidly. "Pressure release valve. Manual override." Another violent tremor shook the hall. The carriage's internal engine roared louder. A heavy locking clamp snapped into place at the rear. Final sequence. Mara yelled from across the hall. 30 seconds, maybe?" The architect stepped backward along the balcony, flanked by armed guards. "You cannot outrun progress," he called down calmly. Cole fired at the balcony railing, forcing the guards to duck. Gabriel grabbed the largest lever on the console and pulled. Nothing. Locked. He slammed it again. Still nothing. "Safety lock," he muttered. "Keyed." Evelyn's voice cut through the chaos. The symbol. She ran toward them despite gunfire. The brass key in her hand glinted in the steam. Gabriel stared at the console. There. A circular brass slot matching the vault engraving. "You've got to be kidding me," Mara breathed. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She jammed the key into the slot and twisted. The mechanism groaned. For one terrible second. Nothing happened. Then, a deep internal clunk echoed through the rails. The pressure gauge needle dropped slightly. Gabriel grabbed the lever again and pulled with all his strength. This time, it moved. Steam blasted violently from side vents. The hum stuttered. The armored carriage jerked violently. Inside it, Something heavy slammed against interior walls. The architect's composure finally cracked. "Stop them!" he roared. Consortium guards surged forward. Cole and Mara opened fire in coordinated rhythm. Thomas, despite his injury, fired from behind the locomotive wreckage. The federal officer fought back-to-back with Gabriel. The hum dropped further. The carriage's engine sputtered. Steam clouded the entire hall. The rails beneath them vibrated violently, then slowed, then stopped. Silence hit like a hammer. Only drifting steam and distant shouts remained. The launch line had failed. The armored carriage sat dormant in the center of the terminal. Gabriel leaned heavily against the console, breathing hard. Evelyn pulled the key free. Cole scanned upward. The architect was retreating. "Not this time," Cole muttered. He sprinted toward the balcony stairs. Mara followed without question. Gunfire cracked behind them, but the fight below was tipping. Without the launch line active, the consortium guards were losing coordination. Workers, emboldened by the chaos, were fleeing the building. The federal officer was shouting arrest commands. Cole reached the balcony first. The architect stood near a side exit, flanked by 2 remaining guards. He didn't look panicked now, just calculating. "You've delayed it," he said to Cole calmly. "Nothing more." Cole raised his revolver. "Seems like more." The architect smiled faintly. "You think this was the only line?" That hit. Mara's expression darkened. "There are others?" she demanded. The architect didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a small detonator device from his coat. Cole's pulse spiked. "Drop it. You've already seen too much." He pressed it, but nothing exploded. Instead, a distant boom echoed from far south, beyond the horizon. Cole's stomach dropped. Not here. Somewhere else. The architect lowered the detonator slowly. "That," he said softly, "was the second line." Silence. Even Mara looked shaken. Gabriel reached the balcony level behind them, face grim. "He's telling the truth." Evelyn stepped onto the stairs behind Cole. The weight of it settled over them. They had stopped this station. Not the system. The architect slipped his detonator back into his coat. "You can arrest me," he said calmly to the approaching federal officer. "But you cannot arrest momentum." The officer leveled his weapon. "You're under federal custody." The architect did not resist. As guards restrained him, he looked once more at Evelyn. "Your father was a cautious man," he said. "You are not." Evelyn's voice was ice. "My father believed in law." "And you?" She stepped forward slightly. "I believe in consequences." The architect was escorted away. Below them, the terminal lay shattered. Steam dissipating. Workers whispering. The armored carriage silent. Gabriel stared south toward the horizon where the distant boom had echoed. "They've activated another line," he said quietly. Mara crossed her arms. "How many?" Gabriel didn't answer immediately. "Enough." Cole looked at Evelyn. "This isn't over." She looked back at him. "I know." Outside, night settled over the southern expansion yard. Fires burned where demolition had begun. Federal riders were securing the perimeter. The battered locomotive sat proudly in the wrecked entryway, like a stubborn relic of another era. But far beyond the dark horizon, something was moving, fast. And whatever had launched from that second line was already gone. The fires were still burning when the stars came out. Not wildfires, controlled ones. Federal agents had sealed the yard, rounded up contractors, confiscated manifests. The armored carriage remained locked in the center of the ruined terminal, its steel skin blackened by steam and soot. But the silence felt wrong, too temporary. Cole stood outside beneath a broken archway, watching sparks rise into the night. The air smelled of oil, scorched timber, and wet iron. Behind him, voices murmured in tense clusters, workers being questioned, guards restrained, engineers detained. Mara approached, wiping grease from her hands. "They've secured the carriage," she said. "Empty." Cole looked at her sharply. Empty. No crew. No passengers. It was preloaded with sealed cargo compartments. Which means it was meant to launch unattended. Cole's jaw tightened. Then what did they send south? Gabriel stepped out from the shadows. Something already loaded. Evelyn joined them, the satchel now in federal custody, but the key still in her hand. My father's documents prove intent, she said quietly, but not scope. The federal officer approached, coat replaced with a dry one, face grim and exhausted. We've detained the architect, he said. His name is Edwin Harrow. Cole nodded slowly. He won't talk. No, the officer agreed. But others might. Thunder rumbled faintly in the distance. Not a storm this time. Distant machinery. Mara looked south again. They're not stopping. The officer's expression hardened. Washington will intervene. Gabriel gave him a look that carried no optimism. Washington financed it. Silence. The weight of that truth hung heavier than any explosion. Thomas approached slowly, shoulder freshly bandaged. They're moving wagons out the south road, he said, quietly. Supplies? Cole asked. Or cleanup, Thomas replied. Evelyn stared at the dark horizon. If the second line launched successfully. Where does it lead? Gabriel answered without hesitation. Border territory. Mexico? Mara asked. Further. The officer's eyes narrowed. Foreign contract? Gabriel nodded once. Private rail, private army, private war. Cole felt something shift inside his chest. This wasn't a land grab. It was destabilization. Evelyn stepped closer to Gabriel. You said you were protecting leverage. Yes. What leverage remains? Gabriel looked at her steadily. You. She didn't understand at first. Then she did. The key. Gabriel nodded. There are more vaults. Mara blinked. You're certain? I helped design the redundancies. The federal officer stiffened. You just admitted involvement. Gabriel didn't flinch. I admitted knowledge. Cole stepped closer. How many vaults? 3 total. 1 here, Mara said. Destroyed, Gabriel corrected. Or nearly. And the second? Evelyn asked. Gabriel looked south, mobile. Cole's stomach tightened. The carriage. Yes. Evelyn's voice sharpened. And the third? Gabriel hesitated. That hesitation told them everything. Where? Cole demanded. Gabriel's eyes shifted north. Black Ridge. The name hit like a gunshot. Evelyn went still. My father's bank. Gabriel nodded. Basement foundation. Reinforced during renovation. Mara swore softly. Which means... They didn't blow it up to destroy evidence, Cole said. They blew it to access it, Gabriel finished. The officer's face drained. And we rode south, chasing the wrong fire. Cole didn't wait. He was already moving toward the horses. Cole, Evelyn called. He turned. If there's another vault in Black Ridge, he said evenly, and the consortium knows we're here. They'll move tonight, Mara finished. Gabriel mounted his horse smoothly. They already have. The federal officer hesitated. I don't have authority to abandon this site. You don't need authority, Mara replied. You need speed. The officer stared at the dark yard, then at the south horizon, then north. Finally, he gave a short nod. I'll take 6 riders. Cole swung into the saddle. Evelyn mounted beside him. Her leg was stiff, but she didn't complain. Thomas climbed awkwardly onto his horse. Mara adjusted her rifle. Gabriel settled into position beside Cole. You knew, Cole said quietly as they formed up. Yes. And you didn't tell us. I wasn't sure which side you'd choose. Cole gave him a hard look. You still aren't. Gabriel didn't answer. They rode, north, under starlight. The plains stretched wide and black before them. No wind now. No storm. Just cold silence. After an hour, Mara rode closer to Evelyn. You understand what happens if they reach that vault first. Evelyn nodded. They won't just take documents. No, Mara said quietly. They'll erase the town. Evelyn's grip tightened on the reins. Black Ridge. The place where it started. The bar. The Callow brothers. The first punch. Now it was the final target. Cole rode ahead slightly, scanning the terrain. Far in the distance, a faint glow appeared against the horizon. Too bright for lanterns. Too steady for campfires. His stomach dropped. "Do you see that?" he asked quietly. Gabriel did. "Yes." Mara leaned forward in her saddle. "That's not dawn." No, it wasn't dawn. It was fire. And it was coming from Black Ridge. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. "They've started." Cole's voice hardened into steel. "Ride." They spurred their horses into full gallop. The glow grew brighter with every mile. Smoke began to rise. Not a small blaze. Not an accident. Multiple fires. Coordinated. As they crested the final ridge before town, they saw it. Black Ridge was burning. Not completely, but strategically. The bank, the sheriff's office, the telegraph station, all in flames. Consortium riders moved through the streets in organized formation, not looting, securing. The Callow brothers stood near the saloon, armed and terrified, no longer bullies, just pawns. Cole felt anger rise, but controlled. Evelyn's voice trembled with fury. "They're emptying the vault." Gabriel's eyes locked on the bank's collapsed facade. "They're sealing it behind them." Mara checked her rifle. "How many?" Cole counted quickly. 20. Maybe more. The federal officer cursed softly. "We can't charge blind." Gabriel's voice was calm again. "We don't charge." Cole looked at him. "We cut the head." His eyes shifted toward the center of town, where a single black carriage stood in front of the burning bank. Not a rail carriage, a horse-drawn one, elegant, polished, and beside it, another familiar figure, tall, controlled, coat immaculate despite the smoke. Edwin Harrow, free. The federal officer stared in disbelief. He was in custody. Gabriel didn't look surprised. Temporary custody. Harrow turned slowly, as if sensing their presence on the ridge. "Even at this distance," he smiled. Cole's jaw set. "This ends tonight." Evelyn's voice was steady now. "No," she said quietly. "It begins." Below them, the flames roared higher. Black Ridge, where a cowboy walked into a bar, was about to become a battlefield. And this time, no one was watching from the shadows. They were all in it. The fire painted the town in violent orange. Shadows leapt across storefronts. Smoke rolled thick over rooftops. Sparks drifted into the night like dying stars. Cole and the others watched from the ridge for only a heartbeat longer. Then he spoke. "Split them." Mara nodded immediately. High ground and crossfire. Gabriel's eyes stayed locked on Harrow's carriage. "He'll run the moment we engage." "Not if we give him a reason not to," Evelyn said quietly. Cole looked at her. She didn't look afraid anymore. She looked furious. Below, consortium riders were moving with purpose. 2 at the telegraph station hauling equipment out. 4 posted near the bank ruins, others patrolling the main street. The Callow brothers stood disarmed near the saloon doors, hands raised, faces pale in the firelight. Bullies reduced to spectators. The federal officer turned to his 6 riders. 2 with me on the west flank. No stray shots. Townsfolk inside. They nodded and peeled away. Mara chambered around. "I'll take the grain tower," she said. "Best angle." Gabriel dismounted already. "I'm going straight for him." Cole grabbed his arm briefly. "You run alone, you die alone." Gabriel met his gaze. "That's fine." Cole held it a second longer. "Not tonight." They rode down together, fast, not screaming, not firing, just thunder of hooves breaking the unnatural order Harrow had created. A consortium scout spotted them first. He raised his rifle. Mara's shot cracked from the ridge. The rifle spun from his hands. Chaos ignited instantly. Consortium riders mounted up. Shouts erupted. Gunfire split the street. Cole rode straight through the first wave, revolver flashing twice. Two riders down before they understood the direction of attack. Gabriel moved like a blade. Precise, ruthless, efficient. The Federal riders engaged from the west, cutting off retreat lanes. Smoke thickened as wind shifted. Evelyn dismounted near the alley beside the bank ruins. "Stay back!" Cole shouted. She didn't. Instead, she ran toward the collapsed foundation where men were hauling metal crates from beneath charred beams. The third vault. Two consortium guards turned toward her. Thomas fired first. One fell. The second lunged. Evelyn struck him with the brass key across the temple and shoved him backward into burning debris. Cole saw it and felt something fierce and protective twist in his chest. She wasn't the girl in the bar anymore. She was the storm. Harrow stood calmly beside his carriage even as bullets snapped around him. Unhurried, untouched. Two elite guards flanked him, returning precise fire toward Gabriel's advance. Gabriel ducked behind a trough, breathing steady. "You see?" Harrow called across the chaos. "You cannot outpace industry." Cole slid beside Gabriel. "Shut him up." Gladly. They moved in coordinated bursts, using burning wagons and overturned tables as cover. Mara's rifle cracked from above. One of Harrow's guards dropped cleanly. The second guard fired toward the grain tower. Too slow. Mara hit him through the shoulder. Harrow was alone, but not panicked. Never panicked. He opened the carriage door calmly. Cole surged forward. "No." Harrow stepped halfway inside, then paused. He looked at Evelyn standing over the exposed vault entrance, smoke behind her, flames lighting her silhouette. For the first time, his composure faltered. "You should have stayed quiet," he said softly. Evelyn's voice carried across the street. "You should have stayed human." She reached into the vault remains and pulled out a metal case, smaller than the others. Not weapons, not rail schematics, sealed documents. Harrow's eyes sharpened. "That does not belong to you. It belonged to my father." Gunfire intensified briefly as remaining consortium men attempted to regroup. Gabriel stepped into the open street now, revolver steady on Harrow. "Get away from the carriage." Harrow sighed faintly. "You're still choosing the wrong side." Gabriel's voice was ice. "No, I'm choosing the right enemy." Harrow's hand slipped inside his coat again. Cole fired first. The bullet struck Harrow's forearm, knocking whatever device he was reaching for into the dirt. Harrow staggered, but did not fall. His carriage driver cracked the reins suddenly. The horses lunged forward. Harrow grabbed the side rail one-handed and hauled himself inside despite the wound. "After him!" Mara shouted from above. Cole ran. Gabriel mounted mid-stride and kicked his horse hard. The carriage tore down Main Street, flames reflecting off polished wood. Consortium riders attempted to block pursuit, but Federal gunfire pinned them. Mara descended from the grain tower at speed. Evelyn clutched the metal case tight and mounted behind Thomas. "Go!" she shouted. The chase tore out of town in a blaze of sparks and smoke. The carriage driver was skilled, cutting through side paths, avoiding debris. Cole gained ground inch by inch. Gabriel rode beside him, relentless. Harrow leaned from the carriage window, blood on his sleeve but eyes steady. "You think killing me stops it?" he shouted over the wind. "It slows it," Cole replied. Harrow smiled faintly. Not enough. He reached again into the carriage interior and threw something onto the road behind them, a metal sphere. Cole's eyes widened. Down. The sphere detonated in a burst of blinding magnesium light and concussive force. Horses screamed. Cole's mount stumbled but held. Gabriel's horse reared violently, nearly throwing him. The carriage gained distance. Mara swerved wide to avoid debris. Thomas nearly lost Evelyn but recovered. Smoke thickened behind them. Cole pushed harder. They were nearing the canyon road now, narrow, winding, dangerous at night. Harrow's carriage took it without hesitation. "Madman," Mara muttered. Cole followed. The canyon walls rose steep and dark around them. Loose rock skittered under hooves. One wrong step. Death. The carriage swayed violently, but kept speed. Gabriel edged closer. "Shoot the axle!" he shouted. Cole steadied his aim despite the gallop. Fired once, missed, fired again. The rear axle splintered. The carriage jolted violently. One wheel shattered against rock. The entire vehicle flipped sideways in a violent crash, slamming into the canyon wall. Horses broke free and bolted. Dust exploded upward. Cole skidded to a halt. Gabriel dismounted instantly. They approached, cautiously. The carriage lay wrecked. Door crushed. Interior shattered. Blood marked the stone. But no body. Cole's pulse spiked. "Where is he?" A soft scrape echoed from above. Both men looked up. Harrow was climbing the canyon wall, one-handed, bleeding but determined. "How is he still standing?" Thomas muttered. Harrow reached a ledge halfway up. He turned back down toward them. "You can burn towns," he called weakly, "but you cannot burn progress." Gabriel climbed after him without waiting. Cole followed. Mara covered from below. The climb was brutal. Loose rock, blood-slick stone. Harrow reached the top ridge first. Gabriel was only seconds behind. But when they pulled themselves onto the ledge, Harrow stood there, swaying. Beyond him, a narrow rail spur cut through the canyon wall, hidden, camouflaged, and on it, another armored carriage, smaller, steam already building. Cole stared in disbelief. Another line. Harrow smiled through blood. Redundancy. He staggered toward the carriage door. Gabriel lunged. But a rifle shot cracked from the shadows. Gabriel jerked sideways. Hit. Cole fired toward the muzzle flash. But the sniper vanished into darkness. Harrow pulled himself into the carriage. The door slammed shut. The engine roared alive instantly. Cole grabbed Gabriel before he fell from the ledge. "You're not dying here," Cole growled. The small carriage launched forward with explosive acceleration down the hidden canyon track. Gone in seconds. Silence returned to the ridge. Gabriel leaned heavily against Cole, blood spreading across his side. "He's heading west," Gabriel whispered. "To where?" Cole demanded. Gabriel's eyes flickered weakly. "To the coast." Mara reached the ledge moments later. "Did we get him?" Cole looked down the empty rail line disappearing into darkness. Number. Below them, Black Ridge burned in the distance. Evelyn climbed up last, clutching the recovered metal case. She looked at Gabriel's wound, then at the vanished rail line. Her jaw set hard. "This isn't about a town anymore," she said quietly. Cole nodded. No, it wasn't. Far to the west, somewhere beyond the desert, a man who believed he could outrun consequences was speeding toward the ocean. And for the first time, Cole felt something deeper than anger. He felt inevitability. The hunt had left the plains. Now it was heading for the coast. Dawn broke cold and merciless over the canyon. Gabriel was still alive, but barely. Cole had pressed cloth against the wound through the night, while Mara kept watch, and the federal officer secured the lower trail. The bullet had passed clean through Gabriel's side, missing the spine by inches. "Lucky," Thomas muttered. Gabriel managed a faint, humorless smile. Number. Calculated. Evelyn knelt beside him, steady hands tightening a fresh bandage. Her dress was ruined, smoke-stained and torn. There was dried blood on her sleeve that wasn't hers. Black Ridge still smoldered behind them. The town hadn't burned to ash, but it had been wounded. The bank vault was destroyed. The sheriff's office gutted. The telegraph line severed. The Callow brothers had disappeared during the chaos. No one mourned. Cole stood at the canyon edge, staring west. The hidden rail spur cut clean through the rock face and vanished toward open country. The track was narrow gauge, engineered for speed, not freight. The small armored carriage Harrow escaped in had been designed for distance and efficiency. He's heading to the coast, Gabriel repeated weakly. Which port? Mara asked. Gabriel swallowed carefully. San Arden. Cole frowned. That's 3 days by horse. 2 by rail, Gabriel replied. The federal officer stepped forward. If he reaches a port with documentation destroyed and vaults cleared, he vanishes. Foreign investors will shield him. Evelyn rose slowly. He still doesn't have this. She lifted the recovered metal case. Harrow's expression when she pulled it from the vault had not been anger. It had been fear. Cole turned to her. What's inside? She knelt and opened it carefully. Not weapons, not contracts. Maps. Detailed rail maps. Hidden spurs. Subterranean routes. Private depots. And at the center of one, folded schematic. A mark near San Arden Harbor. Gabriel exhaled. That's the primary line. The second launch, Mara realized. He sent something ahead of us, Cole said. Yes, Gabriel confirmed. Likely personnel, or funding, or both. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. So we ride 3 days to catch a man already 2 ahead? Cole shook his head. No. Everyone looked at him. He pointed to the narrow-gauge track. We ride the line. Mara blinked once, then grinned faintly. You want to steal a launch carriage? Not steal, Cole said evenly. Borrow. The federal officer looked skeptical. We don't have an engine. Gabriel's eyes flickered toward the wrecked armored carriage at the southern yard, then back at the canyon spur. This line runs on pressurized incline momentum, he said. Not constant engine pull. There will be staging points. Cole's mind moved quickly. Maintenance depots. Gabriel nodded. 2 between here and San Arden. Evelyn looked west. Then we don't chase him, she said quietly. We intercept. By mid-morning they were moving again. Not toward Black Ridge. Not toward Washington. West. The canyon track paralleled an old supply road for nearly 10 miles before veering into rocky terrain. Gabriel rode strapped to the saddle but conscious. Mara scouted ahead. The federal officer rode silently, expression hardened by shifting loyalties. By noon, they spotted it. The first staging depot. Half buried in rock, steel doors sealed. Minimal guards, 3 at the front gate. Cole slowed. Quiet, he said. Mara nodded and slipped into the rocks. 2 rifle cracks, almost simultaneous. 2 guards dropped. The third reached for a signal flare. Thomas tackled him before he could fire. Within minutes, the depot was theirs. Inside, 2 compact rail carriages rested on side tracks, not as armored as Harrow's, but fast. Gabriel inspected the control console carefully. Pressure-fed propulsion, he murmured. Preloaded tanks. Can we run it? Cole asked. Gabriel nodded once. Yes. The federal officer stepped forward. If we take this, we're crossing jurisdictional lines. Cole gave him a flat look. Lines are what started this, no one argued. Evelyn stepped into the carriage last, still holding the metal case. She didn't look back toward Black Ridge. She didn't hesitate. Gabriel engaged the pressure release valve. Steam hissed sharply. The carriage vibrated alive beneath them. Cole stood at the rear platform, revolver holstered, but ready. Hold on, Gabriel warned. The carriage launched. Not with the massive roar of the southern yard engine, but with a violent forward surge that slammed them backward. The narrow-gauge track cut through desert, canyon, and dry flats in straight, aggressive lines. Wind tore past them at terrifying speed. Thomas shouted something, but it was lost in the rush. Mara leaned forward, eyes scanning the horizon. They were flying, not riding. Flying. Gabriel kept one steady hand on the pressure gauge. 2 hours to next depot, he shouted. Cole scanned the landscape rushing by. They were closing distance, but so was Harrow. Late afternoon, they reached the second staging depot. Abandoned, empty. Steam residue still warm on the track. Mara touched the rail. He passed within the hour. Cole's jaw tightened. Then we're close. Gabriel adjusted pressure settings. If we push harder, We risk derailment. Cole met his eyes. Push. The carriage surged faster. Faster than designed. The desert blurred into streaks of gold and red. The coast wind began to carry faint salt into the air. They were nearing San Arden. As dusk approached, they saw smoke ahead. Not wildfire, industrial, harbor smoke, ships. And at the edge of the coast, a massive steel structure extending into the sea. Private dock. Private rail terminus. Mara stared hard. That's not public infrastructure. No, Gabriel said quietly. It's departure. Through the fading light, they saw it. At the end of the rail line, Harrow's small armored carriage was already docked beside a waiting steamship. Workers were loading sealed crates aboard. Armed guards lined the pier. Cole's pulse slowed. Not from calm, from focus. How long? He asked. Gabriel checked pressure. 10 minutes. Evelyn gripped the metal case tighter. Then we don't let him board. The carriage screamed down the final stretch of rail. The guards at the dock noticed too late. One fired a warning shot. Mara returned fire instantly. Cole braced himself. Gabriel pushed the final lever. The carriage rocketed into the terminal dock with explosive force, smashing through a barricade and scattering workers. Steam exploded outward. Chaos erupted. Harrow stood at the gangplank of the steamship, coat freshly replaced, arm bandaged. He stared at them. No surprise now, only inevitability. You are persistent, he called over the noise. Cole stepped off the carriage. You are finished. Harrow smiled faintly. Number 1. I am diversified. He gestured subtly. Behind them. The rail they had just used began retracting into the dock platform. Self-sealing. Designed to vanish. Mara swore. He built escape into the foundation. Harrow stepped backward onto the gangplank. Progress cannot be stopped, he said calmly. It can be delayed. And delay, Harrow replied, is profit. The steamship horn bellowed. Crewmen began lifting the gangplank. Gabriel stepped forward despite his wound. It ends here. Harrow looked at him. You always were sentimental. Cole moved first. He sprinted toward the gangplank, Mara covering fire. Thomas shouting behind them. Evelyn right beside Cole. The gangplank lifted halfway. Cole jumped, caught the edge, pulled himself up. Harrow drew a concealed pistol. Fired. The shot missed Cole by inches. Evelyn tackled Harrow sideways. Both slammed onto the ship deck. Cole rolled, drawing his revolver. Crew scattered. Mara reached the base of the gangplank as it rose higher. Gabriel tried to follow. Collapsed to one knee. On deck, Harrow and Evelyn struggled violently. He was stronger, but wounded, and desperate. You don't understand the scale, he hissed. I don't need to, she shot back. Cole reached them. Harrow twisted suddenly and grabbed Evelyn, pulling her toward the ship's rail. Salt wind roared around them. Waves crashed below. Drop the case, Harrow warned. Evelyn didn't. Cole leveled his revolver. Let her go. Harrow smiled faintly. You won't shoot. Cole's finger tightened. The steamship horn roared again. The dock was slipping away. Mara fired from below. A warning shot that shattered a deck lantern beside Harrow's head. Harrow flinched. Just enough. Evelyn drove the brass key hard into his wounded arm. He cried out and lost grip. Cole lunged. Harrow stumbled backward, heel catching the slick rail edge. For a brief, suspended second, he hung there, eyes locked with Cole's. No fear, only disbelief. Then, he fell, into the black water below. Silence hit like thunder. The steamship continued moving. Cole grabbed Evelyn before she could slip. They both stared over the rail. The sea churned violently. No sign of Harrow. Gabriel's voice carried faintly from the dock. Is it done? Cole looked at Evelyn. Wind whipping her hair. Fire in her eyes. She closed the metal case slowly. Yes, she said. For him. But far below the surface. Something metallic detached from the underside of the ship. A small emergency buoy capsule. and it began drifting silently toward open sea, unnoticed, for now. The steamship cut through the dark water like a blade. Cole still had one hand wrapped around Evelyn's wrist, long after Harrow disappeared beneath the waves. Salt spray lashed across the deck. Crewmen shouted in confusion. The harbor lights of San Arden shrank behind them. Cole, Mara's voice carried from the dock below. "Jump or you're taking a cruise." Cole looked once more into the black water. No bubbles, no body, nothing. He made the call. "Hold tight," he told Evelyn. They vaulted over the rail together. The drop was brutal. Cold seawater swallowed them whole. For a second, there was only darkness, pressure, and the roar of blood in his ears. Then they surfaced. Thomas and two federal riders had already pushed a small harbor skiff away from the pier. Mara hauled Cole up first, then Evelyn. Gabriel, pale but conscious, was being steadied into the boat from the dockside edge. The steamship continued its outbound path, horn bellowing once as if mocking them. Evelyn pushed wet hair from her face. "He's dead," she said. No one answered. Cole watched the dark waves carefully. Harrow had fallen awkwardly. He'd been wounded. The current near the dock was strong. He should have surfaced. He didn't. But something in Cole's gut refused to settle. "Back to shore," the federal officer ordered quietly. The skiff cut through harbor chop and returned to the dock. San Arden was restless. Dock workers whispered. Harbor guards were already spreading word of gunfire. The consortium's presence here was heavier than expected. Private security at warehouses, unfamiliar men moving in pairs. Gabriel stepped onto the dock with visible effort. "It's not over," he said. "You saw him fall," Thomas replied. "Yes. And?" Gabriel met Cole's eyes. "He plans exits within exits." Evelyn clutched the metal case tighter. "If he survived that fall, he'll head for secondary extraction," Gabriel finished. Mara scanned the harbor line. "Ships?" "Submersible tenders," Gabriel said quietly. That got everyone's attention. "Submersible?" Thomas echoed. Gabriel nodded. "Experimental. Coastal retrieval vessels. Quiet. Fast." Cole looked back at the sea. "Then he doesn't need to surface." The federal officer swore under his breath. "How long would something like that take?" "Minutes," Gabriel replied. They all turned toward the water. The steamship was further out now, but beneath it, something moved. A faint disturbance in the wake. Cole's eyes narrowed. There. Mara followed his gaze. A small metal cylinder bobbed briefly to the surface, near the stern of the departing ship. Then vanished again. Evelyn's voice was low. "Emergency buoy." Gabriel nodded grimly. "Tracking beacon." The realization hit hard. "He didn't fall blindly," Cole said. "He fell deliberately." Thomas stared. "You're saying he jumped?" "Yes," Gabriel replied. "The ship was only stage 1. The federal officer turned sharply. Where would a retrieval vessel meet him? Gabriel scanned the horizon. Not open sea. Too visible. He pointed south along the jagged coastline. Cavern inlets. Mara swore softly. "Of course." Cole didn't hesitate. "Mount up." They ran from the dock to the horses secured near the harbor edge. San Arden's narrow streets were alive with rumor now, but no organized resistance moved against them. The consortium had expected the steamship to solve the problem. It hadn't. They rode south along the cliffside trail at speed. Moonlight spilled silver over the ocean. Waves crashed violently against rock faces far below. Gabriel rode stiff, but determined. "There's one inlet large enough," he said. "Old Smuggler's Cavern." "How far?" Cole asked. "Half an hour." They pushed hard. The trail narrowed as it wound down toward the coast. Salt air thickened. Then they heard it. A low, mechanical hum beneath the roar of the surf. Not a ship. Something smaller. They crested the final cliff bend. Below them, a hidden cove carved into black rock. And inside it, a partially submerged steel vessel. Sleek, low profile, steam venting in tight, controlled bursts. Mara's eyes widened. "I'll be damned." At the mouth of the cavern, a small signal flare burned faint green on the rock ledge. Cole saw movement. Two figures hauling someone up from the water. One limp, one steady. Harrow, alive, bleeding, but conscious. Cole's jaw hardened. Not this time. They rode down the final slope without concealment. No strategy, just velocity. The consortium retrieval crew saw them too late. Mara's rifle cracked first, dropping one man instantly. Thomas fired next. Cole leapt from his horse before it fully stopped. Gabriel followed despite the pain. Harrow was being dragged toward the submersible hatch. He looked up as Cole closed the distance. No shock, just irritation. "You're very inconvenient," Harrow rasped. Cole tackled him hard into the sand. They rolled. Harrow still had strength left. Desperation, lending him power. He struck Cole across the jaw. Cole returned the blow. Harder. Evelyn reached them seconds later. She didn't hesitate. She placed the barrel of a confiscated pistol directly against Harrow's chest. "Enough." Harrow looked at her. Blood at the corner of his mouth. Seawater dripping from his hair. "You think you've won?" Evelyn's eyes were ice. "I know you've lost." Behind them, the federal officer and his men secured the submersible crew. Mara stood guard at the hatch. Gabriel approached slowly. "This ends now," he said quietly. Harrow laughed weakly. "No, it evolves." Cole grabbed him by the collar and hauled him upright. "You built lines in secret. Yes. You armed private soldiers. Yes. You burned towns. Yes. No denial. No shame." Harrow's gaze drifted toward the dark sea one last time. "You cannot stop what men are willing to finance." Gabriel stepped closer. "Maybe not," he said, "but we can expose it." The federal officer moved in with restraints. Edwin Harrow did not resist this time, as they secured him properly. Not temporary custody, not negotiated detention, real chains. The submersible vessel hissed angrily as its pressure systems cooled. The ocean roared against the cavern walls. Evelyn stepped back slowly, breathing hard, the metal case still in her hand. Cole looked at her. "It's done." She stared at Harrow, then at the submersible, then at the open sea. "No," she said softly. "It's finished. For him. For the consortium's coastal line. For Black Ridge. For her father." Mara approached Cole quietly. "You planning on chasing ghosts if he slips free again?" Cole shook his head. "He won't." Gabriel met his eyes. "You sure?" Cole's expression hardened. "This time," he said, "we bury the whole thing." Above them, the moon rose higher over the Pacific. Waves crashed. The submersible sat captured in the cavern. And for the first time since a cowboy walked into a bar, the chase had nowhere left to run. But peace. Peace was still another matter. 6 days later, the smoke was gone. But the scars remained. Black Ridge looked different now. Not ruined, changed. The burned-out shell of the bank had been cleared down to stone foundation. The telegraph office stood roofless, but upright. The sheriff's office had new timber beams already rising. Rebuilding had begun. Cole stood outside what used to be his small supply shop. Now nothing more than a charred frame and collapsed roof. The consortium hadn't torched it completely. They hadn't needed to. After the first night, Harrow's remaining men had returned quietly. Not to fight, to intimidate, to collect. Windows smashed, stock stolen, threats delivered in whispers. No more open warfare, just slow bleeding. The kind of pressure that didn't make headlines. Mara leaned against a hitching post nearby. "They're not finished," she said. "No," Cole replied. "They won't attack directly anymore." "No." "Then what? Starve the town," Mara nodded. Consortium contracts had already started appearing in neighboring counties. Supply routes shifted. Rail access denied. Freight diverted. Black Ridge was being quietly erased from trade maps. Gabriel stood near the rebuilt saloon doors, coat buttoned despite the heat. He had healed enough to stand straight, though the wound still slowed him. "Harrow is en route to federal custody," he said. "Federal custody," Cole repeated flatly. "Yes." "You trust that?" Gabriel didn't answer immediately. "I trust leverage." Evelyn stepped out of the temporary boarding house across the street. She wore a simple traveling dress now, dark blue, practical. No silk, no lace. The metal case had been handed over to Washington. Copies had been made, names exposed. Some arrests had already begun. But power did not collapse overnight. It shifted. The Callow brothers watched from across the street. Their ranch operations had been audited. Their political backers questioned. They no longer swaggered. But they still existed. Fear had replaced arrogance. Thomas approached with a folded newspaper. "San Arden Herald," he said. Cole took it. Headline: Private Rail Executive Detained in Federal Corruption. Probe, small column beneath it, mentioned irregular expansion contracts. Small, contained, controlled. Mara smirked faintly. "They're shrinking the story." "Yes," Gabriel said. "To prevent panic. To prevent exposure," Cole corrected. Evelyn walked to Cole's side. "They can't undo what's already begun." Cole looked at her. "And what's that?" She glanced down Main Street. Shops repairing. People sweeping ash. Neighbors rebuilding together without waiting for rail contracts. "Independence," she said. Gabriel studied her carefully. "You realize this town will suffer for it." "Yes." "And you?" She met his gaze. "I already have." Silence settled between them. Cole finally spoke. "You don't belong here anymore." She didn't look surprised. "I know." Black Ridge had been her home. It had also been the battlefield. Mara straightened from the hitching post. "You're leaving." It wasn't a question. Evelyn nodded. "Yes." Thomas blinked. "Where?" Evelyn looked west, not toward San Arden. Further. Somewhere the rail lines don't decide the future. Gabriel exhaled quietly. "Those places are shrinking. Then we'll find what's left." Cole watched her. There was no fear in her now, only resolve. Mara looked at Cole sideways. "You going with her?" Cole didn't answer immediately. He looked at his burned-out shop, at the cracked window frames, at the town that had both shaped and scarred him, at the men who would continue pushing pressure quietly through contracts and whispers. Then he looked at Evelyn. She held his gaze. "You can't fix every town," she said softly. "No," he agreed. "But you can choose where you stand." The wind moved down Main Street gently, carrying the smell of fresh timber instead of smoke. Gabriel adjusted his gloves. "I'll remain," he said. Cole raised an eyebrow. "You?" Gabriel nodded. "Someone has to ensure the federal eyes stay open." Mara gave him a faint smirk. "Didn't take you for the public service type." Gabriel's expression was unreadable. "Neither did I." Thomas scratched the back of his neck. "So, that's it?" Evelyn stepped closer to Cole. "No," she said. "It's a beginning." That afternoon, a small crowd gathered near the edge of town. Not a parade, not a ceremony, just quiet understanding. Cole had packed little: a saddlebag, ammunition, a spare shirt. Evelyn carried even less. The metal case was gone. The key, the brass key that had opened vaults and halted launch lines, rested now in Evelyn's hand, one final time. She walked to the ruins of the bank foundation. Kneeling, she placed the key into the cracked stone and pushed until it wedged deep. Not hidden, not treasured, left behind. Cole watched silently. She stood. "Let it rust," she said. Mara approached and embraced her briefly. "You ever need trouble," Mara said quietly, "send word." Evelyn smiled faintly. "I seem to attract it." Gabriel stood a few paces away. "You changed the board," he said. "So did you," she replied. He inclined his head slightly. Try not to find another empire. No promises, she said. Cole mounted his horse. He extended a hand. Evelyn took it and swung up behind him. For a moment, they simply sat there, the town stretching behind them, the open road ahead. The Callow brothers watched from a distance but did not approach. The Federal riders had already departed. The rail line lay quiet for once. Cole nudged the horse forward. They rode west, not toward a port, not toward a rail spur, but toward open country where tracks had not yet carved destiny into earth. As Black Ridge grew smaller behind them, Evelyn rested her head lightly against Cole's back. "You don't regret it?" she asked. "No. Leaving?" "I'm not leaving," he said. "I'm choosing." She smiled faintly. The sun dipped lower, painting the plains gold. Behind them, Black Ridge would rebuild, slower, harder, but freer. Ahead of them, another town waited, another horizon, another chance. And this time, no one would bully them out of it. No secret vault, no hidden line, no empire in the shadows. Just two riders disappearing into the wide, unclaimed west.